Any discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Subdivision applications. Subdivision application 2020-0-158, Kreek, northeast of 2010-22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. This first subdivision application is to subdivide out a 12.08 acre title from an 80 acre title for country residential use and then consolidate the remaining area of 67.92 acres to the adjacent 80 acre title. So essentially doing a lot line readjustment. So you would start with 2 titles, ending with 2 titles, just having a smaller acreage yard in that northeast corner, and then the larger agricultural title that would end up being 147.92 acres in size. Let Steve go through the recommendation and the planning comments.
Good morning.
Morning, Steve.
This application is to enable a separate title to be created for the existing older farmstead yard in the very northeast corner of the quarter section. As mentioned, the quarter section is currently divided into 2 80-acre portions, the east half and west half, owned by 2 different landowners. The proposed acreage there is a long established farmstead. It's actually from the early 1900s. It has one of those old Sears or Eaton's catalog homes on the parcel there. It's been there a long time. And well-developed farmyard with a shop building, barn, grain bins, dugouts, multiple sheds, and a shelter belt and such. The applicants are planning. They have an agreement with the landowner to the west for him to purchase the remnant agricultural land, to put that all under one larger agricultural title, to create a 147.92 agricultural title, and then he's going to put a pivot system under that. The residential yard's proposed west property line follows an existing fence line in place and separates the pasture land that's kind of up at the north end of the yard there from the west cultivated farmland. There will be a bit of an angle on the southwest corner of the proposed yard parcel in order to account for the irrigation pivot system that's going to go on the agricultural land. So one of the items with this application is that there is a beef operation located across the road to the northwest. That feedlot is owned by the landowner who is purchasing, who plans to purchase this agricultural land. They actually live in the yard on the west half there of the quarter section. So the application wouldn't normally meet the MDS of what would be applied. However, this does conform with the county subdivision policies in that the farmstead area being subdivided, which was established in the early 1900s, existed prior to any of the MDS regulations coming into effect, and also prior to the CFO actually being established. 1992 was when the first permit was issued. In addition to that, the yard previously did meet the MDS when the original permit was established for the CFO. But a number of years back, the CFO did expand, which lessened that MDS, and the landowner who's subdividing here, the yard, agreed at that time and signed off on a waiver that they didn't oppose the expansion of the CFO. So with those 2 elements in regards to the MDS regulation, then the application can be considered. So this, with the consolidation, as mentioned, currently there's 2 titles in the quarter. We'd have 2 in the end. Instead of the 280s, we'd have a yard and the larger remnant agricultural piece at the 147.92 acres. The application for the subdivision yard part would require a waiver because it came in at 2.08 acres. The way they want to follow the existing fence line there and separate the pasture land and the buildings and improvements on there from the cultivated land. So it is above the 10 acres, so it would require the granting of a waiver by the subdivision authority to accommodate that. If you don't see the merit in the way that they've presented their yard there for that, you could stipulate a condition that it wouldn't approve no larger than the 10-acre maximum parcel size. So during the circulation here, there was no objections or concerns received. None of the utility companies require any easements for utilities. The RNID is okay with their proposal, and have made arrangements for the turnout and the water delivery and such, so they have no concerns with it. So on that basis, I have recommended approval to you on the basis that the consolidation does happen by a plan of survey, so that there are no more than 2 titles in the end. They start with 2 and end up with 2. And just the standard conditions on there would be that taxes are paid up to date, development agreements entered if required, and the plan of survey and consolidation done. Since the application came out to you, I have heard back from Fortis and ATCO Transmission and Alberta Health. All 3 of those have no objections, and none of them, the utility agencies, require a utility easement. So with that, I have the resolution in your package there presented to you with a recommendation of approval and a consideration of a parcel size waiver granted on the merits of their proposal and the way the yard is such there to approve that just over 12-acre parcel size.
Are there any questions of Steve or Hillary? Morse?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, that little parcel down there in the southeast corner down there, what, is that pasture or what is it?
It would look like it's just an existing pasture area. They'd probably, once they have a pivot on there, they'd maybe put that underneath the entire pivot.
It's not, there's no buildings and nothing.
Nope,
No.
nope, no improvements on that area.
Any other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move subdivision application 2020-0-158 be approved subject to the granting of a parcel size waiver and the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Any other questions? Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Subdivision application 2021-0-005 Royal Trailer Group for Lot 5, Block 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next subdivision application is to enlarge, so another lot reconfiguration, similar kind of to the last one. The application is to reconfigure the property boundaries between 2 titles, one being a 1-acre title and the other being a just over 4-acre title. And what they're requesting is that they enlarge the western smaller title by 1 acre, so increasing it to a parcel size of 2 acres. And then there would be a remnant, the remainder of the larger title would then be just over 3 acres. This is obviously located in the Broxburn Business Park. The enlargement would allow for that existing business to expand their, I think, storage and parking areas for their business. You can see the lot line, how the configuration would look on page, sorry, just let me get, on page, sorry, it's not listening to me. page 20 of your agenda of your agenda. And it just shows the ortho image, and then also kind of the survey drawing is the next image under that. So you can see how that would kind of create an L-type shape lot. Steve will go through the planning comments and the recommendation.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the subdivision in Broxburn involves an approximately 32.8 meter, 108 foot wide strip of undeveloped land. The east vacant lot is, as you can see, is a larger lot at over 4 acres. And once we subdivide that off, and we'll consolidate it by plan of survey, so it all becomes one lot, that we end up with lots approximately 2 acres and 3.03 acres in size at the end. So they'll both be pretty good sized lots. The application is to enable the size reconfiguration as that east business that's there is looking for some room to expand. They have a site plan, also an additional area for parking and storage and such. So they've made an agreement with the east title owner in order to purchase that and add it to their own title. So with that, servicing will be unaffected by this land swap and consolidation. The existing Broxburn Business Park infrastructure as is will still be used in the same manner, and it won't impact that. Access to both lots is from the south internal subdivision road, Broxburn Boulevard there within the park. There's a older area structure plan done for Broxburn Business Park, and there's no specific criteria rules in there in regards to parcel size or layout that would prohibit this type of reconfiguration or that would contravene any of the policies in that area structure plan. On this application, during the circulation as well, there was no objections or concerns received. At the time I prepared the report, there was no easement requirements. I have since received some additional comments from ACO and TELUS, ACO Gas and Pipelines, and Fortis, and none of them have concerns and none of them need a utility easement. It is noted that the county does have a general utility easement running across the frontage of these lots in Broxburn, so everything is protected. So with that, the parcel sizes and the proposal does meet the bylaw, land use bylaw for rural general industrial land use. So I have recommended an approval to you. It would be based on the conditions that taxes are paid up to date, development agreement entered into, and that the subdivision consolidation be done by a plan by Alberta Land Surveyor to register land titles. So it's all one contiguous lot in the end, not two separate pieces or titles. Alternatively, if you think that the realignment doesn't make sense to you, and you could, I guess, deny it on that basis, such a decision would likely be appealed. But overall, the proposal does meet the bylaw in regards to sizes and the use of the land, and it also confirms with the Broxburn Business Park area structure plan that was put back in place in 2002, I believe it was.
Are there any questions? So Steve, just a curiosity, how does this affect the stub ends for water and wastewater?
It doesn't
doing
affect the stubbins that are currently there.
Sorry?
It does not affect the stubbins that are currently there.
So there's one for the current size 3-acre lot,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't affect,
No, because they already have an existing service to the that western parcel because they have a building there. So
okay. And is the lot that's going to be left over shrunken down in size to the new size, is it the one they're putting dirt in, or is that the next one over east?
I think they have put some dirt in the back there to try and level out the rear of that particular parcel for grading purposes. There is a landscaping company that's the next parcel to the east. So this one here next to Royal Corp is a landscaping business, but it does look like in the past they have put some dirt back there to help level out that, the rear of that particular parcel.
Yeah, this picture's fairly old, so.
It's from 2018, so I think they did do a bit of dirt work there to try and smooth it out.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Do they manufacture those trailers over there, or you just sell them?
It's an empty lot.
It's an empty parcel.
Yeah, but I mean, they're gonna, the businesses want supply it for this.
No, it's not this business that's applying for it doesn't manufacture anything on site, no.
That's the electrical business, isn't it?
I do believe so, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But the,
So, the adoption of the agenda?
okay, so Hillary, but they did manufacture trailers there before, didn't they?
No, there's never
So-
been trailer manufacturing
So
on this
that's
area.
not the same Royal trailer as,
Yeah, but this isn't where they've ever manufactured anything.
okay?
Mr. Chair, they own a lot of the parcels
They just
in
own
there
the
that,
land.
yeah, that.
You go ahead, Klaus.
Then I'll move that subdivision application 2021-0-005 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, and let's do subdivision approval 2016-0-122, time extension request from Darray Farms Limited.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this isn't a new subdivision. The applicants are just requesting a time extension for the approval of that subdivision done in 2016. It took them some time to come into agreement with the adjacent landowners on some easement issues and also for the road closure that had to occur. So now they've finalized all of those agreements and have everything in place. And so they are requesting, as per our requirements, that county council has to grant them a time extension to, so that they can finalize this and create those, the lots that were approved back in 2016. And in the agenda package that you have there for this, you can see the approval that was done back in 2016 for this particular application. Steve can provide any additional comments if he needs to.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just as is required in the Municipal Government Act, if a plan of subdivision is not registered at the Land Titles Office within a year of being approved, the registrar won't accept it unless council order designate grants an extension. So in this particular application, I did grant the first time extension. Now it's before council because they're requiring a second. As mentioned, the applicants just ran into some problems. The main one was being that they needed to register a utility right-of-way easement across a lot that they owned. Actually wasn't part of the subdivision application, but that utility was required for the subdivision. And they basically just jumped the gun a bit, and they sold and transferred that parcel before they had the easement signed in place. And after doing so, they ran into some trouble with the new landowner about getting that registered easement registered, so and signed. So that took some time for them to straighten that out. And once they did, because of the time involved, they kind of forgot that they didn't have the subdivision registered. So they're looking to move ahead with a second phase of that that 508 Business Park, Taylor Business Park there. But before we can start processing a future phase application, they need to complete and register the first phase. The first phase had where the road plan was going to be realigned and some of the utility right-of-ways and such, kind of establish the blocks for the subdivision here. So we have to complete and register that one first before they can proceed to, which they want to right away here with a second phase here of doing 3 or 4 lots additionally in there. So with that, they do need council's blessing to grant a time extension. They asked until for May 7th here for the time period. That should be sufficient. I have everything in our office now that we need, all the consent signed and all the paperwork and the plan, everything's ready. We just need the time extension approval from council in order for the register to accept that up at land titles. So,
Any questions? So just to make sure I'm clear on what you're saying here, this time extension is a request only for the piece that has been transferred and sold to the other person?
It's an extension for the entire subdivision. They can't register this subdivision without you granting a time extension.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And is that enough of time for them to get this all done?
Yep, like Steve said, he has everything kind of ready to go. They just need to get those documents sent up to land titles. Generally, that takes about 4 weeks to get everything set, so that should give them enough time to accommodate that schedule.
Okay. Any other questions? Need somebody to move this in? Ken?
Uh, 2016 0 122 plan extension request for the Darway Farms Limited.
Are there any other discussion? If not, call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you.
thank you.
Just like
For
that.
now. You weren't too hard on me today.
Oh, here's the ones you got little notes on. I don't know which ones you take back with you. Is there another one to sign for the extension?
No.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Steve. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. We have a public hearing. Can we have a motion to go into a public hearing, to open a public hearing? Claus? Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. This is the public hearing for Bylaw 21-002, which is an amendment to the land use bylaw for a parcel in the hamlet of Monarch from Hamlet Public Institutional to Hamlet Residential. And this is known as the Monarch Water Tower site, or former Monarch Water Tower site. County Council did approve first reading of this bylaw on January 13th of this year. And so with that, we're going through any of the comments or anything that came up as a result of the notice for the public hearing. The Monarch Water Tower was demolished in the fall of 2020, and county administration determined that the best use for this parcel would be for residential purposes. In order to move forward with creating the parcel, the parcel first needs to be redesignated from public institutional to Hamlet Residential. Once the titles have been redesignated to Hamlet Residential, the lots can be subdivided, serviced with municipal water and sewer, and then put up for sale at council's discretion. This particular area was, I will note, was not contemplated for redevelopment or residential use in the Hamlet growth study that was done in 2017. But it was not known at that time when the water tower would be removed, so we just left it kind of as is until we knew what was going on with this particular site. It was determined that this location is suitable for residential development as it is close to the Hamlet amenities, being the community center, which is directly to the east, and the school, which is just across to the west, and there's also a municipal park to the northwest. And this parcel is easily serviced by water and sewer, so there's no challenges in that regard. The proposed redesignation does comply with the policies of the county's municipal development plan, as it will add to the range of housing options available in the county by providing a more urban-style service lot. In addition, the application is consistent with our the MDP policies that are related to the hamlet specifically, as it supports the growth in our hamlets. The proposal was circulated to the county departments and external agencies for review. No concerns were expressed with regards to the redesignation. The application was also advertised in the January 19th and 26th editions of the Sunny South News and sent to the adjacent landowners. And I did not receive any calls or comments with regards to the application. So we assume that the landowners are somewhat supportive of this application. We did receive a number of calls previously when we talked about removing the water tower and possible development. Lots of interest in terms of when are these lots coming up for sale and when can people purchase them. So I think there is some interest in the hamlet and in the area for this type of lot. So with regards to the financial impact, there is a cost to the county to install the services for each of these parcels, which is approximately $10,000 per lot. And it is estimated that the cost for the lots, or the sale price for the lots, could be anywhere between $50,000 and $60,000 per lot. This would be verified once we get closer to the time of sale by either the county's assessor, or we could get a third-party appraiser to come in. But the 50 to 60 is based off of the existing, what lots have been going for in the area for a service lot in Monarch of about the same size. So we anticipate that that's a probably fairly reasonable price for the type of lots that would be created. So with that, we are recommending approval of Bylaw 21-002, that it be read a second and third time. Are there any questions of council at this point in time?
Yeah, Ken?
Yeah. Do they have it, the lots done already?
No.
It's just the one lot, or just the, and then it goes thing, so they, and you're saying there's six lots?
There will be 5. Yeah. So we have put in the subdivision application. So Steve Hardy is working on that right now. Just given the width, the lot size is going to be, there'll be 5 parcels. That'll be just over 55 feet, around 55 feet wide. And I do believe the lot is 150 feet deep. So they're fairly good sized parcels for the hamlet.
So the entrance is on Edward Street?
Yes, the entrances will be off of Edward Street.
Hillary, are there back alleys in the hamlet? Or how do they collect the garbage, or is it out front, or?
It depends on the type of street. I know that the garbage pickup, I do believe, is all on the front for the hamlets. So off of the street, because the alleyways probably aren't adequate for like the trucks to go through. So I do, when I've gone through before, they go to the front, the front road.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? And last call, is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? And is there anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? And last call, is there anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no questions, does council have any questions? Yes, Mars?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a comment I got to make. I know it's a beautiful cleanup, however, it came at a cost. What I was going to ask, Hillary, anybody from the Hamlet has all questioned the whole issue down there?
Nope, not that I'm aware of. Nope.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move so.
Bob was first.
Bob was good.
Yep. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Now we could do second reading.
I'll do so.
Or it's- Any discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And third reading. Clause. Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you. Oh.
One question for you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
My iPad goes blank almost every meeting we have lately. Does that have something to do with the moment you made?
Oh, I'm not touching that one.
I missed that. What did he say? I don't know. What did he say?
We'll leave that for a future comment, but, yeah. Okay, let's move down then to department reports. And the first one up is Planning and Development, 2020 Annual Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the 2020 annual report for the Planning and Development Department. It was still a busy year given all the things that had been going on this year. We had a lot of projects going on, and then also development and subdivision. Everything seemed to be, it didn't slow down due to the pandemic. So with that, so we did the following projects in 2020. The Hamlet growth studies for Chin and Kip were completed and approved by County Council. The Hamlet growth studies for Shaughnessy and Diamond Cities, the drafts were completed, and we sent out the Hamlet surveys to the residents for review and comment. We completed the group country residential land use strategy and also completed the subdivision and road realignment for the former CPE station lands in Turin. For the Development Authority, as you know, we had, Sarah was on mat leave starting from January, so we had brought on Selena to be our development officer for the county for the remainder of the year. And she did a very good job, all things considered. And in 2020, we had 181 development permit applications received. This was the same as the year before. So in 2019, we also had 181 development permits. And the construction value for this last year was significantly lower, coming in at about just over 57.5 million. In 2019, it was at 328 million, but this was mostly due to two significant projects in the county, the wind project and the solar projects. Those added a significant amount of value to development permits in 2019. So I would say that the value of permits was about on par for like a typical year in the county. As of December 31st, 164 permits had been issued, 3 were refused, 5 were withdrawn, and 9 were still in circulation. Of the permits that were issued, 58 were residential, 33 were an accessory building, 31 commercial, 23 agriculture, 5 signs, 10 home occupations, which was a bit higher than our typical year. And then we had 1 public institutional, 2 miscellaneous, and 1 demolition. And I've included at the end of this agenda report, there's a chart that shows the breakdown from 2019 to 2020 in terms of the types of permits that were issued for the year. And you can kind of see the breakdown. Residential is obviously our most common, then commercial, agricultural, following that. The Development Authority also issued 51 compliance letters, and that was up from the previous year where we had 44. So a compliance letter is typically when a person wants to sell their lot, they will submit a real property report to the county, which we can review to see if that property and improvements conform to the county's land use bylaw. With regards to building permits, which are issued on our behalf by Park Enterprises, there is 761 permits in total, safety codes permits received. And in 2019, there was 560. So there was an uptick in the number of safety codes permits that were issued for last year, or for this last year. So that shows me that people were still getting their electrical, plumbing, gas permits, and there were still building permits being issued in there too. The revenue received from the contract agreement with Park Enterprise prices for 2020 was $74,453.95. With regards to subdivisions, County Council acting as the subdivision authority made 27 decisions on 27 subdivision applications, all of which were approved. We did have one development appeal this last year, and it was the appeal was upheld by the appeal board, and the permit that was under consideration was approved with some new conditions, and that was for rainbow greenhouses. There is some concerns with drainage by an adjacent landowner, and so the appeal board did amend the permit to include some more consideration for drainage and holding ponds. For redesignations in 2020, we had 9 applications that were considered by County Council, and all of them were approved. We had an amendment for one area structure plan, so no new area structure plans were approved by County Council, but there was an amendment to the Pater area structure plan, which was also approved. 3 road closure applications were submitted to County Council for their consideration for first reading, which were also approved. And then with regards to intermunicipal relations, there was 18 referrals that were received and responded to. And then we had the Village of Barron's intermunicipal development plan was approved by both municipalities. The county and the town of Coaldale amended the intermunicipal development plan, which was approved by both councils in September. And then the county and the town of Colehurst, we moved forward with regards to the intermunicipal development plan amendment, which looks at that north of Colehurst KIP area and the associated area structure plan, and that received first reading by both municipalities in the latter end of 2020, and the public hearing will be held on February 25th of this month. So with that, there is, as you can see, there is lots of things going on with the county in terms of planning and development. And this year has shown that lots of people are eager to start their building projects or development projects. So I think in that regard, we've done pretty well through the pandemic. And just as I noted on that final page there, you can see the breakdown of development permits issued between 2019 and 2020. Are there any comments or questions that council might have with regards to
Yeah,
this?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the Park Enterprises, I think I know what they are, but maybe you could explain that to the rest of us down there, what they do.
So Park Enterprises issues all the safety codes permits for the county. So that includes building permits, plumbing, electrical, gas, and private septic system permits on our behalf. So the county is accredited in all of those disciplines, but we obviously don't have the in-house resources to do the inspections nor the specific knowledge to support that. So typically rural municipalities will contract that service out to a third party. And in this case, Park Enterprises was they received the contract for that. So they issue once it gets through the development permitting process, people will have to get their building permits to ensure that their structures meet the building code or electrical code, plumbing code, as required by the province.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got some mixed feelings about that particular enterprise. And The reasons for that is when a person builds a building, you have to get the permit from the county already anyways. And then, you know, if you need plumbing in there or any other utility, that contractor, whoever does that, he does so, but he also needs to do it the right way, otherwise he is violating his own business. So why do we need Park Enterprises to do what's normally gonna be done anyways?
All those types of permits fall under the Safety Codes Act for the province of Alberta, and you're required by the province to obtain permits for those types of works being
So the
done.
contractor automatically falls under that.
No,
because
they
he
don't.
needs to.
No, they don't get the permits. They put it in,
No, but it could be done that way. That's the way I look.
not legally under the province of Alberta.
Ann?
So that is a provincial institution?
That's correct.
Or it is not an institution, a provincial put on to the municipalities?
It's a
But to
provincial,
me,
yeah.
you know, it's absolutely a ridiculous thing, because, let's face it, you know, all the contractors what do the utilities and whatever down there, they have to go by what is requested already as safety and everything else. So, you know, to me, it's almost like a double dipping type of an issue.
Ann?
Yeah. Just a reminder, everybody, to turn your mics on, because it's hard hearing with the masks and everything, so if you could turn your mics on. But to your question, Councillor Van der Veen,
Zeenstra?
oh, sorry, Zeenstra. Oh, I'm going to pay for that. Okay. It's something that we do have to do, Councillor Zeenstra. So one of the benefits of Park Enterprise is we don't have, by contracting it out, then it doesn't mean another staff member internally. And the amount of revenue that we get back through these permitting processes allows us to have a development officer. So it is a very cost-effective, beneficial contract for the county to have.
No, it's still double dipping, like, you know, it's
No.
the guy who does the contracting, if it is the owner or whatever, he needs to pay for that.
Yes, he does, and it's
You know,
not,
and that-
it's not double dipping. You have to get a development permit, and then if you're going to do electrical or plumbing, you have to get those as well.
Yes, I
That's
understand
not-
that, but
yeah.
to me, it could be done differently. But that's maybe some other council meeting, we could bring that up. However, this thing is forced on by the province, not by the municipality, right?
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
provincial regulation.
And it is double dipping, double dipping.
I just want to caution you, though, I do want to caution you that not to use that term double dipping, because I don't want our stakeholders to get the wrong idea. We are not double dipping. We are only making people pay for what they need to pay for. We have to be very careful the message that we send. Very careful.
Klaus?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, wait a minute, Klaus Zeenstra. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to quite go up to that high level.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But no, with Park Enterprise, we've had them for years and years, because I've never seen anything else in the time that I've been here. Do we once in a while put it up for bid that there are other people that are?
Yes, we do, and it just got renegotiated again. There are other people, and we did put out an RFP. We do it for a 3-year term, and that gives us the opportunity to review it every 3 years. Yeah.
So Hillary, I have two questions. You talked about development permits for wind and solar farms. How long are those permits good for?
They can be good for, solar, we only allow them to be extended up to 18 months for to start construction. Wind projects, we can grant extension for them to be done within 4 years, just because of the scale of those projects.
So this June perhaps, or maybe a little later, their solar panel one will run out? And they'd have to reapply, or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So then just looking at your bar graph that's on, I don't know what page that is, 4, I guess. the lines are pretty close, but yet the dollar value you had given us was quite significantly different.
Yeah.
So is that because of the type of development that was applied for, or the actual cost of the project, or how does that
It
based on?
usually, it's usually the type of project, right? So you could have a development permit for a large business or processing facility, which is obviously gonna cost a lot more than a warehousing type facility. So in 2019, we did have those two, the two solar locations and then the wind projects, which were added a significant value to the development permits for that year. And this year it was more, we just had, we didn't have any of those types of applications come in. We just had your commercial, like your regular commercial type structures and residences. So then it reflects that, the different values of the permits depending on the structure.
Okay. Any other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the progress on the solar and wind developments? Have they been building?
I know for thank you, Councillor Campbell, through the chair. I know for the solar projects that they are looking to start as soon as they can in the spring here, hoping to break ground so that they don't have to reapply for permits again. But I think those are, they had some issues with their federal approvals, I think, or maybe it was through the Alberta Energy Regulator that they had to gain some extra approvals. And then for the wind project, I know that they had to make an amendment to their particular plan. I think they had changed the type of generator that was going to be on the wind turbines, and there was a change in the height. So they had to go back to the energy regulator to get that approved. And so I'm not quite sure where they're sitting. I anticipate, though, they did, they said they were going to start this next spring and summer too. So, but we'll follow up with that maybe at the next quarterly report. I'll maybe get some more specific information on those two projects.
Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions? It says we don't need a motion, but I would just as soon
It's
have
fine.
one to receive for information. Laws? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Yep, thank you.
So I think it's just about 10:30, so if you want a couple-minute break, we can. You wanted to talk about the Picture Butte rural crime?
I do.
Is that a
So-
watch or just conditions out there, or?
No, like Lauren, I guess, I kind of have a little bit of background of the association.
Yep.
But you know what? Actually, thank you, council, for seeing me. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Lyle Adams, county resident, business owner in the county, and I'm also president of the Picture Butte and District Rural Crime Watch. So basically, council, I'm here today representing our association because we need some funding. We can't sell our memberships for enough for us. We don't have a very large budget, but we just can't generate enough money from our memberships to keep the association going. And Morris, you might be able to help me out with this. I know a few years, quite a few years ago, there was an association in Picture Butte. It was before I was a resident around there. And about 4 years ago, there was myself and a few other county members in our area started the association up again when the crime was kind of getting out of hand in our area. So as of today, we have 80 members. We represent Picture Butte, Turin, Iron Springs, Shaughnessy, Diamond City, Nobleford, Barrens, and Colehurst. That's the area that we have our membership in.
So just look back or whatever, years ago, the association was there too.
Yeah.
And I was a strong member, matter of fact, I was on the board also, and then it went by the wayside. Why do you think that happened? Do you have any, does anybody have answers for that? Or?
Morris, what I'm finding, even with our association right now, when we kind of did our membership drive 4 years ago, man, we had lots of interest. We had some crime, last year, things kind of spiked up, things have leveled off, and now lo and behold, like as well as you know, 2 weeks ago, well, there was a bunch of break-ins around Picture Butte, Turin, Iron Springs area. Well, now there is interest again, right? So just to give you guys some feedback, of those break-ins last week, we had over 56,000 hits on our Facebook page. So So people are interested in what we're doing, but nobody, it doesn't seem like, wants to become a member to help us out for what we're doing. You know, and I mean, it's been tough for us with COVID as with everybody else. We haven't been able to have an AGM or any kind of membership drive to kind of generate some money. So we're kind of at a standstill. We kind of have about enough money for another 6 months or so, and then we have to make a tough decision whether we're going to keep going or not. You know, because I mean, myself, I've donated pretty heavily out of my business just to try to keep the association going, because I do find some value in it, and I do think we do serve a purpose, you know, in the area and the residents that we are representing. And basically our service, what we provide to our members is, yes, when you are a member, you know, you get some signs, but basically what our priority is, or what we want, is when we hear something that goes on, we put it on through Facebook, through Instagram, via Twitter to all our membership, so that people can say, hey, you know what, there's a suspicious white Ford driving around, caught him in my yard, you know, keep a lookout, right? So that's basically what we're trying to do, you know. And I do think the RCMP does find it quite helpful, but boy, we can't get much help from them either. They're really tight-lipped on providing us with any information, so we're kind of left on our own to try to do what we can in our community.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Lyle, do you guys have a representative in every hamlet and stuff, or doesn't it work that way? Or are you guys just a group that got together? And
Yeah.
So how big is the board at the moment?
Well, there's about 8 of us on the board. Yeah. So I mean, you know, we don't have representation from all those hamlets, but we do have members from those areas that I mentioned.
Yeah, because that would be handy, because then you have a better eye on what's going on.
Yeah.
And especially if a person is a member, you'll probably have his eyes
Right.
open a little bit more than you usually do.
And I mean, Claus, you know as well as I do, it's pretty tough. People sometimes just don't want to donate their time to organizations, right? They really have to feel a need for it or to be affected by something to want to get involved in something, right? So to be honest with you, all of our board right now is from the Picture Butte area. You know, and we had our membership drive, you know, we asked from all these communities when people came that signed up if they wanted to be on the board. Nobody wanted to be on the board. So like I say, it is a handful of us from Picture Butte that are trying to keep this going. So I guess, you know what, for me, I think you guys who know me, I kind of just get to the meat and potatoes of everything. You know, what I'd kind of like to ask for would be $1,000 a year for a 5-year commitment. And you know what, like that $1,000 a year just would basically help us pay because we have membership dues to the Alberta Association, and, you know, give us a little bit of money to, you know, hopefully do some advertising in the sunny south. You know, hopefully, if COVID gets over, you know, be a part of the Picture Butte Parade. You know, we were in the Iron Springs Parade, you know, do those kinds of things in the community. So that's kind of, you know, that's kind of our ask. Like I say, we don't have a very large budget, but, you know, like for us directors that are on the board, we can't keep taking money out of our own pocket just to try to keep it going all the time either.
Go ahead, Klaus.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So basically, it's the only organization north of the river, basically, right, in the county?
As far as we know.
Yeah.
Yes, I think, yeah, no, yes, right in the county of Lethbridge, like, because I know Fort McLeod has an association, I know Vulcan does too, but you're right, Claus, north of the river, as far as we know, we're the only one.
Because I had a meeting with, that I took over from our reef in Fort McLeod, that was in August, and we got together there, and there were some MLAs there were some MPs there, but apparently you guys never got notified that there was a meeting there, probably.
Probably not, no.
Because, and we were gonna meet on a regular base, and with the, because the person that is in chair of Conrad Van Eerden, I don't know, do you know him?
Well, I've heard the name, yeah.
Because he's chair of the province
Yeah.
from rural crime.
Yeah,
And so we were gonna start having meetings like every couple of months, every quarter, they wanted to have a meeting. But I haven't heard anything after that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I guess it's not going the way it's supposed to be going.
yeah.
So Lyle, I have 2 questions.
Yep.
Do you do this citizen on patrol thing as well, or
No,
not?
we don't,
Okay.
no.
And who does your Facebook postings and all that kind of stuff?
My
for you?
daughter.
Your daughter does?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Klaus.
And would it help, because we of course have our county website, and we have the county connections and stuff like that. If we would put a piece in there, if you could work together with
Sure.
our media person.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Because I think that way that we can get the word out. I mean, it's that you need $1,000, and I can see that, but I mean, the more that you get, the better it is.
Oh,
So,
for
yeah.
sure. You know, and even, you know, the other question that I was gonna ask you too, and I don't know what the approach is, that, can we get any information from your county officers that are patrolling in the county? Like, is that kind of stuff available to us? You know, even if you guys, and I don't know if they probably don't have any information on Facebook, but if we could kind of tag on together, you know, say, hey, you know, this is happening in this area, keep a lookout, right? It's all that kind of information that gets out to the residents that helps, so that everybody can keep an eye on their own stuff,
Yeah, I agree with that.
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like, Claus, I really like that idea, if we could get together and, you know, if your media person could get a hold of me or whatever and do something in the county connection, and if also with your county officers, if we could kind of work collaboratively together when stuff is going on to get information out there.
We can take care of that.
Ann?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Klaus, did you have
Yeah,
anything?
because we do have quarterly reports from the RCMP and stuff
Okay.
like that too, so, yeah.
No, that would be fantastic.
Steve?
Thanks, Chairman. In the past, when the RCMP had been here, they mentioned they kind of watched the Twitter and stuff of the real crime watch, don't they, to sort of catch?
Well, yeah, sorry, Lauren. I do think they do watch it, but what we were kind of after is to try to get some information from them ahead of time,
Yeah,
right?
kind of goes both ways, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because like it was quite interesting, you know, so the two fellows that were caught last week, well, Kreek Pascal put the pictures on them that they caught from, or I don't know how we got them, but they were on a camera. So immediately we put that stuff on our Facebook page. Well, holy man, like our Facebook page is lit up like a Christmas tree, right? So that's the kind of information that we're looking from, or I'm not necessarily saying the RCMP needs to send us pictures of maybe some possible persons of interest, but just information. And they just don't want to seem to work with us. Yeah, we've met with them before, and they tell us, oh yeah, we can work together, and it just never happens. So like I said, we had a meeting just the other night, kind of, you know, determining what our next steps are, and our kind of next steps is if the RCMP is there to help us, fine, but if not, then we just kind of have to do it on our own, and it is what it is at the end of the day. But I think if you guys are willing to help us out with the county connections and get some information from the county officers, I think that's a really, really good step. Because I think people know that we're out there, but it's kind of some, you know, like other things, if it's not happening to you, do people really care, right? So,
Yeah,
and,
that's
uh,
very true.
yeah.
And
we do, Larry and I do have a meeting coming up, I think, in the next 2 weeks with the
Okay.
RCMP, so we'll also
Sure.
add that to our agenda and
Yep.
touch base on
That'd
that
be
piece
great.
as well, too.
yeah, because actually, Steve, I don't think the last time he was in, he said anything about that whatsoever. I don't recall him mentioning that. But I do 100% agree that it would be nice just to have a sort of heads up, you know, we've had some reports of activity in this area and fan it out to you. I mean, they can't always tell you everything, that's, but.
You know, because
certainly-
like last fall in the area, one of our members, they went out to start the irrigation pump and all the batteries were gone.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, that come out to our members, so then everybody, you know, can kind of start, hey, there's somebody out there lifting batteries, let's keep an eye out for stuff.
Yeah, no, good.
But I gotta say, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the RCMP thinks very highly of that type of an organization as Crime Watch. They have alluded to it several times.
Yeah.
You know, the benefits from it, you know, and so, you know, and they have mentioned that to us too, and yet, you know, sometimes it's hard to work with the RCMP, and, like I mean, some instances too, but the thing is.
Yeah.
The kind north of me and all the way north, about 10 miles or whatever, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What they can see in the last several months.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. No, and you're right, Morris. I do think the RCMP does care about our association. But, you know, maybe they just don't have the time or the manpower just to kind of work with us and relay the information to us.
Because at one time they had 5, 6 officers just.
Right.
to get used.
Well, and now, I mean, in Picture Butte alone, there's nobody there day to day, right? So,
Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think that, well, we all think, I can speak for everybody, that we all support, you know, the Crime Watch, and I think the donation that you're asking for, I think we'll probably have to do that in-house amongst the councillors, see what we do about that. Is that correct, Mr. Reed?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
certainly take it into
Yeah.
consideration, but I think
Yeah.
to get right off the ball, I think the best thing to do is get it into our social media person, and
Okay.
she can
Sure.
get started on a lot of things. I think, you know, the more members you have, the better off you are
Oh,
too.
definitely,
So,
definitely.
but, yeah, your funding request, we can certainly have a look at that.
Yeah,
Ann?
what we'll do is we'll bring a report back to council at the March 11th meeting for the funding request.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So that wouldn't, so we wouldn't be able to have an answer till after the March 11th meeting then? Okay.
Steve?
What do you charge for a membership? And you mentioned that gives you a sign
Yeah.
for the road or something?
Yeah, $50 for 5 years,
Okay.
and that was kind of a stretch at times too. Some people grumbled about that, but yeah, you get two smaller signs, 2 gatepost signs, and then a road sign,
And then access to the.
and to the social media, yeah.
Ken?
Do you have a telephone number that you can, that you can put on your, the gate there, and then have it, because I don't think there's anything or anything, there's no number there.
Yeah, so basically what happens with that, Ken, is that once you become a member, that's when you get access to that information. Because we just don't wanna have a number out there, because I know we've talked to some other associations before that had it wide open. Well, then people were calling in, lost my cat, lost my dog. Well, you know, the people that, or the person that does this, he has a job too, right? Like, he doesn't need everybody phoning in about their dog or their cat, right? So that's why when you become a member, you have access, you're given that number, and then when something is happening at your farm, or you know something, that's where you submit it to our communications person, and they fan it out to the members.
Yeah, because there's lots of times that, people, they come into the yard there, and then, they don't see anybody, and then.
Yep.
And, then I go up, or then I get up there.
Yeah.
But he said, oh, well, we're looking for whatever it is.
Yeah,
And I know that that's not true.
yeah. So that's basically how that works. So like I said, once you become a member, you get access to that information, and then when you have something to report, it gets found out.
Good.
That's interesting to hear you have a communication person, and it's just the one person probably, you know, so that's 24/7. So they could be phoned, whoever that person is, anytime.
Anytime.
In the day or night.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So that's, I admire that person for.
Yeah, I do too.
doing that.
Well, I mean,
So is it you?
no, it's not me. No, it has been, I mean, Morris, it's been really, really quiet up until like last week.
Yeah.
That's when it got busy again. And now these last few days, it's been quiet again.
Claus?
Well, I think you're probably always looking for membership, but people that want to be a member, you can sign me up, so.
Okay? Yeah.
Ann?
Just, so because we're going to come back on March 11th, but in the meantime, I'll make sure that you get connected with our
Sure.
communications person, and we'll do that today or tomorrow.
That sounds very good.
Yep.
Yep. Okay?
Yep.
Well, if there's no other questions, you guys, I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for coming in.
You betcha.
It's a valuable service, so I know, being robbed 4 times myself, I
Yeah.
know what you mean.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah,
Thanks, Lyle.
Stay warm, everybody.
I used to be, but we don't have one anymore. Yeah, Jerry used to do it. Yep. I don't know. Okay, our next appointment is at 11, isn't it? With-
Yes, 11.
Let's do policy, municipal services policy revisions for Lethbridge County vehicles and equipment, use inspections, maintenance, and personnel policies.
Morning, Council.
Morning.
So today I'm presenting, one of the things that administration has been doing in the last while has been doing an overall review of different policies within the county has had for a number of years. So for those that are under my purview, a lot of those I'm just trying to bring up to a current standard and to clean up some of the overall pieces within there. So the new policies that I'm proposing today, a lot of this information has been included in previous policies. This just amalgamates them and brings up, and I checked on current legislation to make them current to today. So I'm just going to go down to the previous council direction. So lots of these policies were adopted well in the past. The majority have been, of the 15 that I have proposed for amalgamation today, lots of those were brought forward in 2010, the vast majority were. There was in general, just as another background piece, there was an overall review of commercial vehicle legislation and municipalities in general and who had current policies in place that met the legislation requirements. So what I'm proposing today as a recommendation is these two new vehicle and equipment policies. Policy 721 would amalgamate Policy 101, use of public-private vehicles by county employees, 701, fleet definitions, 702, vehicle use, traffic laws, and operator conduct, 703, accident reporting, procedure, and liability, 704, care of county vehicles, 710, defensive driving training, 712, distracted driving, 713, driver training and evaluation, 715, daily record, 716, record retention, 717, safety equipment, 718, seatbelt use. Some of these pieces are distracted driving, seatbelt use. They're not required to be a policy per se because they are the law. Policy 722, if adopted, would amalgamate policies 704, which is the care of county vehicles, policy 713, driver training and evaluation, 714, maintenance inspection, 715, daily records, 716, record retention, and 801, maintenance of equipment and tools, all of which can be rescinded accordingly if these are adopted. Previous policy 705, mileage reporting and rental rates, is represented by policies 114 and 155 currently within the administration branch, and policy 706, alcohol and drug use, was brought forward in the last 6 months, and that's currently represented by policy 138, which was adopted recently.
Yeah.
So some alternative potentials, as in reviewing this, the one thing that the county has not done in the last 10 years is done an external review of our commercial vehicle program. So basically we have an external auditor that comes in and they go through all of our legislative requirements as per these policies, and they do a review, and then you get a score accordingly, and then you basically have a carrier profile and commercial vehicle license that says you're successful audited. That is a potential option out there if we want to take a look at that. There is a potential to combine these policies into even one larger document, as they do cover off on primarily vehicles, equipment that the county operates right now. Or as the third alternative, we could leave the existing policies as is, and just, I could come back at a later time to update just on the commercial vehicle legislation portion alone. So there's no financial impact with any of these changes, except for my time preparing these policies in place. Any of the legislation requirements that I did review, lots of it is more policy than anything. There has not been any significant changes in commercial vehicle legislation that will affect any cost points at this point. Is there any questions in regards to policies 721, vehicles and equipment, usage and operations, and 722, vehicles and equipment, safety, inspection, and maintenance? I broke them into two separate, so one talks about the usage and operations, and then one talks about the commercial vehicle requirements and the safety, inspection, and maintenance of our vehicles and equipment.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the safety inspection, you guys do that in-house?
All of that is done by our own internal mechanics, and we send off a couple pieces a year just for an external audit purposes.
So they have to be also certified by that to do so, right?
Yep, we are a certified commercial vehicle inspection facility. We have to renew that license on an annual basis, and our heavy-duty mechanics that we have within the shop are also licensed to do commercial vehicle inspections.
So Jeremy, I read in here, and of course I didn't underline it and I can't find it now, but you talked about renting vehicles. I wasn't quite sure where you were going on that one. Wouldn't it be allowed or something like that definition?
I would have to honestly look at the specifics. I can't recall that one in general. I know.
There is a section there that says, previously policy 705 mileage and rental rates is rescinded. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay.
So does that, I wasn't sure what, you can't, like, if you had to go somewhere and there was no county vehicle to take, are you still allowed to rent one? Like, I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
Oh, so policy, the old policy 705 was about mileage for vehicles. So it spoke to basically if, in that exact instance that you referred to, if you were driving your own personal vehicle, you would claim mileage accordingly, or if you had a rental vehicle, that would be part of that amalgamated cost that would be refunded to you. But all that portion right there is included within policies 114 and 155 already.
Okay.
So it's a repetition of
Okay.
of that exact same piece. And the one that's in policies 114 and 155 has been updated. In policy 705, it's still, I think that was adopted in 2010. It had the mileage rate at 25 cents a kilometer, which is, right now, I believe it's 60 cents a kilometer.
Yeah, I don't, Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That made me, when you were talking about, private vehicle, like your own vehicle or whatever, is there anybody in the county circle that use their own vehicle at work? Not to get to work, but at work?
To get to work, well,
No, not to get to work and from work, but
during the day, we have had, sometimes it has been the case where, depending on the usage of county vehicles, individuals internally have used their private vehicle to conduct county business or to go to county conferences. In those instances, we try to provide as many units as possible for staff to use for their regular duties during the course of the day. It is somewhat situational as far as if there is, I'm going to use a reference towards a conference. If there is a potential conference, somebody could be using their private vehicle.
Go ahead, Klaus.
Well, that's kind of the same as that, as a county when we go somewhere or whatever, that we rent a vehicle and we go there, so that would fall under the same policy there. And another person, that the county counter, is that the one, she's got her own vehicle, if I'm not mistaken.
Ann?
We no longer employ the county counter.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On page 13, you've got bills of lading. Does that fit into the policy? Because most of the policy kind of speaks to the use of vehicles and stuff like that.
So there are portions of this, that bill of lading portion is not necessarily something that's highly applicable to us. It is just a requirement through commercial vehicle legislation to have that within your policy. Modules 1, 2, 3, and 4 are almost carbon copy out of provincial legislation requirements for the policy itself. It's an extra portion that they look for when they're actually reviewing these. Is it applicable to us? No. And I've argued that with commercial vehicle enforcement before, that this doesn't there are items within here that don't necessarily apply to us, but there's always the if. So they look for it when they review these.
So that needs to be in some policy.
It needs to be some policy, yeah.
Okay.
Same thing as similar like the seatbelt use. It is a law, but it needs to be mentioned somewhere within your policy document. Distracted driving is the exact same thing.
You go ahead, Steve.
And that's kind of the section that really started to confuse me. There was so much talk about carrier and this and that, and but I mean, if it has to be in there, that's okay.
Yeah. And I know it's pretty wordy on a bunch of those sections there. Same as with like the trip or not just the trip inspections, some of the records retention stuff gets very repetitive, and there's lots of detail involved with that portion. Sorry, I'm doing this like full scan.
No, that's
mode
fine.
thing.
I'm,
Make sure you got everybody in your sights.
Yeah. Kind of got a corner out of the corner of my eye here.
we're not paintballing today. It's okay.
We always got told by our mom that I got eyes in the back of my head.
Yeah. Then you looked around
the
and there was the
tattoo,
wooden
yeah.
spoon, yeah.
Okay, is there any further questions on the policies? Like I said, there is a lot of this that is amalgamating of existing stuff, and there has been, and you'll find this even with the next, when we move into the next, in the next item, there is a lot of policies that we have that are already covered off by existing ones and have been updated. So for the mileage and the rental rates, that's already included in in a separate policy. This is primarily for our vehicles and equipment.
Any other questions? Need a motion then? Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll recommend that the new vehicle and equipment policies are adopted as a culmination of previous policies, and I'm not going to go through all the rest of them. So, and
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Do we have time to do the next one, or do we need to move on to?
We have to, he's here.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
I'll be back in.
So let's move down to G2, Community Services, and we have an appointment at 11 o'clock, Emergency Management Bylaw Update. Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, council and everyone present. And I'm happy today to have Mr. Clayton Rutberg with us. And as you all know, Clayton is the Lethbridge County Director of Emergency Management and provides that service to Lethbridge County via contract that we have with the town of Coaldale. But he's a town of Coaldale employee, but partially contracted some of his time to support Lethbridge County in emergency management matters. So today we're just going to present a very brief report and an updated emergency management bylaw. Just to summarize, the provincial government made a number of changes to the Emergency Management Act and the corresponding local emergency management regulation, and all municipalities must comply with that. We have attached a draft emergency management bylaw which reflects the required changes, which have primarily to do with emergency advisory committees, agencies, and the emergency management plan. The draft bylaw that we have attached today meets all the requirements of the provincial legislation. Previously in place, we have had since June 2014, in fact, coming up on 7 years, Emergency Management Bylaw 1425. Back on January 1st, just over a year ago, again, the province enacted those changes, and via those changes, and actually previously as well, that we were required to appoint an emergency management advisory committee and agency by bylaw, as well as establish specific guidelines for each of them to follow. And so that this bylaw fleshes that out a little bit more than what was in the existing bylaw. The bylaw must also state that the emergency management agency must review the emergency plan at least once per year. And draft bylaw number 21-003 really, as I'm kind of trying to lead to here, is not significantly different than the current municipal emergency management bylaw number 1425. However, the new bylaw removes one or two spots where it still refers to County of Lethbridge, and changes it to Lethbridge County, changes the order of some of the sections, and generally reflects and includes all the necessary new wording and the requirements put to us by the province. With respect to alternatives, pros and cons, council could consider today reading the Municipal Emergency Management Bylaw number 21-003 three times. The advantage is that it, of course, modernizes the county's emergency management bylaw so that we meet all the provincial requirements. With respect to cons or negatives, we don't really see or anticipate any negative impacts associated with adopting the bylaw. Another alternative, of course, is to defeat the bylaw, and conversely there, we would see no particular benefits to the county by defeating the bylaw, and on the negative side, in fact, we would not be in compliance with the provincial requirements. We're not aware of any direct negative or positive financial implications if the bylaw is adopted. Relatively neutral in that regard, really. And our reasons for our recommendation are adoption of the emergency management bylaw number 21-003 will ensure the county's bylaw is in compliance with provincial requirements. And so obviously, Mr. Chairman and Council, our recommendation today is that you consider adopting this bylaw starting with the first reading. And that concludes my report. And again, we're lucky to have Clayton join us today, and he's really the architect behind this and works with this material kind of day in, day out, and is our subject matter expert. And I'm sure if we have any comments or ideas or questions or anything that we could certainly try to clarify for you. Thank you.
So this would kind of rename what you would have as Emergency Services Committee now to the, what?
No, we still have an emergency management committee, but we also have an emergency management agency, which is broader. And that brings in outside agencies, for example, School Board, Alberta Health Services, RCMP, maybe other municipalities and so on, who we might work with collectively during a major emergency event or disaster.
No, that's not quite what I meant. What I
I'm sorry?
meant was we have a 3-member Emergency Services Committee now. So would this be replacing that slightly under a different name, or is it the same, or how does that work now?
Yeah, I think it's really just the terminology of it, and just matches the terminology with the legislation as well.
So is the committee going to stay or go?
It'd stay, yeah.
That answer it, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Yep.
I just was kind of, it's being called something different now, though. That's all. Is that correct?
I don't know if that.
I don't, I think what it is I think this committee's still there, Vicky, but then we also have this entity which is broader and allows us to interact collaboratively with outside stakeholders. Did I get it right, Clayton?
I think it might just be terminology if I'm understanding your question correctly. I think it might have been previously called the, as you said, the Emergency Services Committee.
Yes.
Whereas I think just in the bylaw, it refers to it as the Emergency Advisory Committee, just because that's the terminology used in the actual Emergency Management Act through the province. But I think in general, the function is still the same.
So then now this new advisory committee, are they part of the bigger committee too? Or the other committee? when it
No,
has
so
more parties?
there's the Emergency Advisory Committee, and then there's the agency. So the committee we see as your group of counselors that you guys appoint each year to that committee. The agency itself is more like myself, Larry, the directors within Lethbridge County, as well as some of our external stakeholders such as fire departments and police. So our advisory committee is more of the committee from council that kind of provides that direction and oversight, and the agency is more us, more boots on the ground that are completing the work.
Any other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this wasn't mandatory by the province for every municipality in the past, is that the way I kind of read it?
It was mandatory in the past to have a bylaw established, but a lot of the, more or less just the contents of the bylaw, or what's mandatory has changed in the last couple of years. They put in the local authority emergency management regulation, which is new in the last couple of years here, which again kind of outlines more contents and what's required of the bylaw, whereas before we were just kind of required to have the bylaw. Like Larry said, a lot of the content is the same, just with some clarifications on the committee, how many times it has to meet throughout the year, whereas some of that stuff was more or less just done before. Now it's kind of outlined in the bylaw.
Any other questions? No other questions? What would you like to do? First reading? Do you want to keep it as is, or just? Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that the Municipal Emergency Management Bylaw number 21-003 be read a first time.
Any discussion on Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 10 of the report on 6.3.3, it says provide advice and assistance to the agency throughout the emergency or disaster. Now, you don't really want council's advice during these times, do you?
So we still do have a legislative requirement to kind of liaise with our committee throughout when we're going. Again, some of that comes back to, the ability to declare a soul and that type of stuff. So I the way we have it set up here is very similar to what we do in Coaldale as well. So a lot of times if we had activated, we're still going to have that link coming back up through and to you guys as the committee and council for your input as well. So we do seek that input, especially if there's financial implications and stuff like that coming out of something as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any clause?
Yeah, so if I hear this correctly, I'd like to think, I don't know if Steve was going in that direction or not, but, so you are not expecting input from any counselor while there's an emergency going on, is that correct?
We would still be bringing back updates and stuff like that through and to the committee and to council in general. There would be input required if we had to declare a soul with stuff like that has to come back up to the committee and council. So in general, really, there would be certain points of input that we would be seeking for more at the council level.
So a couple instances I can think of was when we had the big grass fire that came across the river and was headed towards Colehurst. When we asked for the water bombers to come in, I mean, we had to sort of, okay, that was a pretty hefty touch of expenses.
Especially when you see that
and
large financial aspect.
And then, of course, the Reeve mayor, whatever you want to call it, is supposed to be doing the speaking at public things, so there has to be some involvement there. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Ken? Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the next one would be consider third, and it has to be unanimous. Bob?
Okay, I'll move to third.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? It's unanimous. Carried. And third reading. Steve?
I'll move third, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jeremy, we'll call you back up again.
Sorry, I have to log back into my stuff here.
You having trouble with your iPad too?
No, it's all good. It's working. Okay. So today I'm here to talk about second round of policies. These are within the Public Works Policy Group and recommendations for policies 301, 304, 331, and 332. So as administration has been reviewing all of these existing policies, there's still probably have quite a few more to go through, but this started to kind of summarize a few of the ones that need to be cleaned up. So policy 301 was a coverall policy that was adopted in 1980 and again updated in 2005. Policy 304, road authority for truck traffic, was adopted in 1980 and updated in 2005. This one, at that time, Lethbridge County has put into place an extensive haul road network and priority road gravel maintenance program. And we have several other policies that this one has basically revamped completely, being our haul road network usage and our road usage policies that are 354 and 355 accordingly. Policy 331 was gravel sales. This was updated in adopted in 1979 and updated in 2005. This one is not actually even contained within our schedule of fees bylaw. The policy does state, and it's attached here, that we would do gravel, or we would allow not even gravel sales. We would be providing to residents 15 ton of gravel per year. I believe it was 15 ton.
So Jeremy, on that one, I believe during your predecessor's term, we adopted the policy we would not sell or give gravel out anymore.
Yeah.
So-
Exactly. It's contained in a different policy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is literally cleaning up some of
Okay.
the ones that we have that this one should have probably been rescinded at that time.
Okay.
And this is just the background piece.
Yeah, Klaus?
Does that also mean that we're not allowed to donate gravel?
Donations of gravel?
So we have done that in the past, like to Prairie Engine and, did we give some to Ready Made as well? We have donated gravel before in times. Steve, but it's a limit on how much.
I think
you
that
can
was part of your other policy that you mentioned, that we don't donate or sell, wasn't
Okay.
it? If I recall?
I can't quite remember if we covered off both donations as well.
Because I think in the
we did,
past,
maybe.
I think in the past, we've started a monetary donation instead
Yeah.
of the gravel, maybe?
Yeah, that's true. That's what we did at Ready Made. You're right.
I'm not sure on the donation portion. I know if there is a request, if someone comes forward to me with a request for gravel, let's say it is one of the local societies or something to that effect, I usually ask them to basically put a letter to council to make that request as more of a one-off situation.
Ken?
Yeah, then we can just give $500.
I think that's what we did do. Yeah, I'm sure it is, come to think of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's good. That's part of the discussion process. And tender 330, or policy 332 was the tender policy pertaining to gravel crushing and gravel hauling, and this was adopted in 1992 and updated further in 2005. So each of these policies, previous policies, I'm looking to rescind those policies because of their lack of consistency with some of the existing practices that we have, as well as they have been further replaced by other policies previously. Some potential alternatives for each of these different policies, just starting with policy 301, the coverall. That one is covered off in our HR directives right now. There is a requirement through OH&S to provide staff with reflective gear when they are within traffic settings. One of the cons potentially of repealing this or rescinding this policy is there's a potential that we're not providing all the PPE contained within the HR directive. We try to provide as much as we can for our county staff for whatever jobs that they are doing. Coveralls is a very small part of that because we provide even more than just coveralls. Policy.
So Jeremy, is that would be covered under something like the work boot thing, the safety boots?
It's within our HR directive that we provide personal protective equipment for employees for specific tasks that they might have to do. So the first one is the reflective gear, so whether it's safety vests or jackets, those types of things, and then providing winter coveralls if they're doing brush cutting in the wintertime or other activities in the wintertime that requires personal protective equipment, same thing as hard hats, safety glasses. Work boots is another HR directive that we have that covers off on safety footwear for individuals on an annual basis.
Okay.
Policy 304, the road authority truck traffic, one of the pros of that, it provides another good enforcement tool and further monitoring the county road network. The details contained within that, though, it's going to cause more of an increase in manpower is more the gist of what that will do. So it would require further staff time essentially to monitor all the requirements under that policy itself, in addition to all the other policy documents we have about road usage. On the gravel sales portion, I think we've touched on that portion quite a bit. Obviously, for the ratepayers, it'd be great if everybody got to show up at the gravel pit and take a load of gravel every time at no cost, and you're providing a service. The only problem with that is the potential budget impact. And I can't say for sure how much usage there would actually be of this, but there is a great number of large industrial farming operations within the county, and if they got a load or two of free gravel every year, I'm sure they would take full advantage of it. So that financial impact would be there, as well as that would be cutting into our own supplies for providing services to the overall gravel road network. Policy 332 is the one pertaining to the gravel crushing and hauling. Currently, right now, the gravel crushing is required on a regular basis for the county gravel road network, and it's great having a policy to support this. The con is our procurement and purchasing are already covering off on this portion.
Yep. Sorry, Clarence.
Who do we have as the crusher that's got the contract for the county right now? Or do you have several ones?
We just awarded a new contract for crushing within the Rackus pit to Tallstrip, and the pricing that we received this year was very aggressive across the board. We had four contractors that were all within 5 cents to each other per ton, and the price point that they were at was 50 to 60 cents lower than the last time this was tendered out in 2019.
What would the price be of crushing a ton of gravel?
Right now, our cost, based on the contract that we're entering into, is $3.25 per ton. Whereas the previous contract we had was $3.88 per ton. We just issued an RFP out for this through the Alberta Purchasing Connection. We had 10 interested parties, 5 very local to the general southern area, and several from central Alberta. So there was a fair bit of interest in the gravel crushing itself, and therefore we saw some good pricing accordingly as well.
Morris.
Yes, how much is charges per ton?
$3.25 per ton is going to be our contract with Tallstrip here for crushing within the Rackus pit. $3.25 per ton. Now that that cost per ton is just literally for the crushing portion. The county will be doing all the stripping, and the new construction coordinator is covering off on all of the gravel pit compliance that we have to do for AEP. If you really want to talk about gravel pits sometime, I will bring him in and he will show you all his drone footage and so on.
We're going way too far in the weeds
Yeah,
here, so.
yeah.
Claus?
Well, I just had one question on that one. Would it pay to have your own crusher?
Honestly, no. It is not cost efficient. So anyway, those are the recommendation I have for council is basically for the rescinding of these policies 301, 304, 331, and 332.
Any further discussion? Who's making that motion? Morris? Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. So let's move on to G 1.3, and that's a notice of motion. Morris, do you want to make that?
Yeah, I can, I've been hit by a few ratepayers from the south side of all things, and I don't know why they contact me all the way to the north side, but they did. And I appreciated that, and they were strongly in favor of speed reductions allow heavy trucks on the county level. Oh, I didn't have a turn on?
No.
Sorry about that. But anyways, and I told them I'll bring it forward to council, and I guess the best way to do it is notice of motion, so we can get some background information on it, what the cons and the pros would be if we went ahead with that. And we did once before, and it fell kind of flat on its face, I believe, Mr. Reeve.
Can you recall when that was, the last one? When the last time you did that?
Oh, that gotta be about, I would say 8-10 years ago now.
Okay.
Isn't that about right, you think, Mr. Chairman?
And was it a full-on review of the speed limits all over the county?
It was mainly for the gravel roads.
Yeah.
And it was, we had standing room only when we were planning on introducing it.
So it kind of had two phases, and it was to reduce the speed limit on gravel roads to 60 Ks. And the other part was, after a lot of discussion, was to maybe only have it for heavier vehicles, like so many kilograms and above.
Okay. So what you're requesting right now is just gravel roads?
Just on the county gravel roads.
Okay.
For heavy traffic, so heavy trucks at 60 kilometers. What are the pros and cons to that?
Okay. That's good. Clear?
Yep.
Okay.
So we put a notice of motion, and do we have to vote on that to send it off?
Yes. Larry, is that right? Notice of motion?
No, we don't need to vote on it, it's just the member providing a notice to everyone that at the next council meeting, that member will make a motion as presented, make the motion that he presented.
Oh, okay. So he'll make it at the.
Okay.
If I may, does that need to be the next council meeting, Larry, or could it wait a couple of meetings? Because it is going to take some preparation for staff to come up with the pros and cons.
What I think Larry means is at the March 11th meeting, you have to actually put in, we'll write out a motion for you
Yes.
and give us direction. So, and then we will start doing that.
Okay?
Did I get that? Yeah, good.
Any further discussion on a notice of motion? No? Okay, let's move on. Parking bylaw.
We can talk about
G
this.
2.2.
Jeremy, this is, we get a couple of minutes. Don't worry. I'd like to see the other one, too.
Yeah, I know, I saw that with pictures. He's got his house for sale anyway, so. Yeah. Wants to move to Lethbridge. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before I review this report, I will note, and I imagine council has noticed that inadvertently, somehow, we did not include a copy of the bylaw that has had first reading. And I do apologize for that. And my thought is, if council would like, and if it's acceptable, we could defer this and bring it back in a month when we meet again with that bylaw attached. Or, you know, your wish may be to review and think and talk about it anyway and just kind of see where council's preference to, you know, proceed or not proceed may lie. And again, I apologize. I don't know how that happened.
So, I understand where you're going, and I'm not sure which way to go, because I'm not sure of our time constraints, because we have a 2 o'clock. Do we have time to have any lengthy discussion on this? Because I think it will probably turn into a little more length than.
I think for a best-case scenario, and so council has all the information, it would be best to defer it till the March 11th meeting. Okay.
Again, my apologies. Sometimes the glaringly obvious are the things that we overlook. So we'll bring that back then March 11th with basically the same report, but with that bylaw that has had first reading attached, so that council has the opportunity to you know, have another look and you know, have your thoughts prepared. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Welcome.
Okay, no problem. Let's move back down then to G 2.3, Hamlet of Diamond City Growth Study. Hillary. Yep, she's been hiding in the back there.
I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just let me get my report up.
No idea. I know.
So as you know, Steve Hardy and I should say mostly Steve Hardy, because we contracted Ors to work on the Hamlet studies for us, has been working quite diligently away at these Hamlet studies. And so today I'm bringing forward to you the final Hamlet of Diamond City growth study, and then after that, obviously, the Hamlet of Shaughnessy growth study. In the fall, we completed a survey that was sent out to all of the Diamond City residents, and to get some feedback on what they thought of our initial kind of plan for the Hamlet. We sent them out a map that shows where we anticipate growth could happen in the Hamlet, you know, if there was adequate servicing in place to accommodate it. And in Diamond City, we had a really good response to that survey. We sent out 72 surveys, and we had 51 responses, which is results in a 71% response rate, which is, you know, pretty good when you think of a survey. Steve and I were both really quite happy with that particular response to that. There was you can see a lot of passion in that particular Hamlet with regards to what's going on in and around in them. So in that particular survey, just so you know, we did include some questions with regards to the future of the community hall. And I'm sure that will come up in a future meeting. I think Larry might be talking to the community and then also talking to council about what to do with regards to that particular structure. So the comments that were received, the comments were reviewed, and some adjustments were made to the growth plan with regards to how they saw their community growing, the size of the parcels. Some of the highlights of the survey were that people enjoyed the sense of community, the larger lots, and the quiet living that they have in Diamond City. Some concerns were with regards to animals running around at large, and they wanted to see a larger enforcement presence, both from our community peace officer and then also from the RCMP, although we can't dictate the RCMP, obviously. And then also the proximity to feedlots with regards to air quality. And you may note in other Hamlet studies that this often comes up as something that residents feel, you know, strongly about. So the county did approve through their budget this past year, so 2019 and 2020, to develop these hamlet studies, and the purpose is to show the logical growth within and adjacent to the hamlets that we have today. This also works in with our municipal development plan, where we are looking to build stronger communities and contain our growth to areas where we already have existing growth opportunities. The Diamond City Growth Study commenced this about a year ago, maybe a little bit less than a year ago, with the assistance of Steve Hardy from the Old Man River Regional Services Commission. The background information and historic data were compiled, as well as an assessment of the current condition of the hamlet's dwelling, the lot sizes, and available infrastructure that we have in there, so looking at water and sewer. A draft growth study was posted on the county's website at the end of December, so after we had done the survey, got some feedback, made some adjustments to that particular plan, and a follow-up, so we posted it to the website, and I also sent out a follow-up letter to the hamlet landowners, providing them with the opportunity to review the draft growth study and submit any additional comments by the end of January. Since the final growth study posting and the notification, I received one phone call which was in support of the proposed plan, particularly with regards to infill development within the hamlet boundaries. We didn't receive any other comments or concerns from any of the residents. The final Diamond City growth study addresses the existing state of the hamlet and with a focus on future growth. There are a number of opportunities within the hamlet for development, infill development, which is on map 4 of that particular document. It shows the number of vacant parcels and how those lots could be subdivided. The lands identified for future growth could accommodate approximately, according to our calculations for the growth of the hamlet, 100 years of growth for the hamlet without having to go outside the boundaries. The municipal services there, so potable water and wastewater, will need to be assessed prior to any future subdivision within the hamlet, because right now, with regards to the number of water and sewer stubbins that were put in 2007, there was a maximum that they could apply for, so, and all of those water units, minus one, have been used through successive subdivisions, so, which is great. We know that obviously that program was very successful, but now we've reached a point where we have to kind of evaluate from a public operations perspective, what do we have to do to accommodate more growth in Diamond City? So looking at, do we need to do some upgrades? What would those costs be? So with that, I have recommended that council approve the Diamond City growth study as a guiding document for future growth and development within and adjacent to the hamlet. And then obviously I've included as an attachment the actual draft plan itself. I will just go down to the specific map, which I think is where everybody's kind of interested in what's going on in these areas, where's the growth opportunities. It's on page 27 of 53. 27 of 53, thank you. So there you can see the number of, that we do have a large number of large parcels within the hamlet that could be eligible for future subdivision once we have the servicing aspects reviewed and addressed. So it's kind of unique. Most of our hamlets are almost filled up or have limited number of infill opportunities, and we're looking to outside growth. Diamond City has a lot of those opportunities already contained within the boundary. So it's a unique situation, but I think it's a really good situation that we have there. If we do want to look at future growth, that's something that we can work with. I can work with Jeremy and Devin on looking at what that would mean for the future.
Hillary, can you just explain the special planning consideration area?
Oh, yes, I certainly can. So in the very southwest corner of Diamond City, there's three parcels that are currently not tied into the water and sewer system there. And that was because there was issues with getting those services to those parcels. So they're right now, they're the exception to kind of the county's policy that every parcel has to be connected to water and sewer that's in a hamlet. And so those parcels aren't eligible for further subdivision or development because there's no the access to water and sewer is very limited. And I do believe that's just because of where they're located in the hamlet. The grades wouldn't work to service those 3 particular parcels. So that's the special planning area.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hillary, if somebody would be interested in those 3 parcels, they obvious need a lift station. And if that developer wanted to put a lift station in it, then it could be considered?
Yeah, it would have to, I mean, I think that's something that we would have to look at. Yes, a lift station, but also then looking at the capacity for the existing lagoon. So I think that's kind of the crux of development, even in that special planning area. That one probably would require some additional considerations, but it's more looking at that larger, bigger picture for the sewage lagoons to make sure, see how we could, do we have capacity, do we not have capacity, do we need to upgrade that facility to accommodate more growth?
So the area stated in the lighter green color, do they currently have studies?
No, I don't believe they have, all of those parcels don't have any extra stubbins. All the stubbins that were allocated in 2007 have been used.
So if we were to say, want to expand onto those green shaded areas, to make it kind of viable to do, would you consider going outside of the hamlet boundaries? Like to make up the rest of this on the north side of McKechnie and south of the railroad tracks or something, go there, if they can be serviced, to make it more viable to.
Oh, okay, you mean for the, like to do an upgrade?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's kind of part of that bigger, that we'd have to look at do a study or something just to see where's the threshold. I mean, if we were able to subdivide all of those internal lots, we'd have like a large number of parcels. I think there's potential, but it's a matter of who's fronting the costs for that. Is there enough interest from those landowners to subdivide? And yeah, we could look at outside the boundaries to see, if there's, if that would help, like balance it out from the but we would want to then capture those outside ones in the hamlet itself. We wouldn't want them outside the boundary anymore. We'd probably expand the boundary. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that 100-year growth study, why did you take that number? Because I mean, it's a couple of lifetimes, like the 100-year growth study. And no, because I'll
Go
finish.
ahead.
Okay? Because I mean, if you get another industry in there, for example, like an Agri-Business, then you will get more people because there's a few people also living in Diamond City that are working there. So if you get one like that, how would you go? Because you're calling it 100-year, I find it a little bit far-fetched, because you never know what's going to happen in the near future.
So, Councillor Van der Deen, through the chair, the 100 years comes from, not that we were doing a 100-year study, the 100 years comes from if there was subdivision based off of current growth rates, and the lots were subdivided in the same manner as they have been for, the last 10 years, there would be 100 years worth of growth available in the hamlet. That's where that number comes from. It doesn't necessarily say that it's that it's going to happen. It just says that, if we were looking at what has historically happened, that's how much growth we would have within the hamlet boundary. So it could happen a lot faster if growth happens a lot faster, but it's just saying that if we're looking at historical numbers, that's what it would be. If the hamlet only grew at 2% a year, it would take 100 years for the hamlet to build out internally. And that's just because of the amount of land that's actually available. So that's just because there's that excessive amount in the hamlet right now.
Okay, then my other question would be, like, if that more growth would be coming in a short period of time, how would you go about acquiring more land? And you just talked about approach the landowners and so forth. But would you have to do kind of the same as with our towns, to annex more land, or would we not have to do it that way?
No, there's no annexation, right? The county land is land within the county is land within the county. We can just amend the boundaries to the hamlets. We did that in Turin when we did that subdivision there. We amended the boundary. We just have to notify the province that we've amended that boundary. There's no formal process like an annexation because we're not taking it from a separate municipality. So if we ever wanted to say include the lots north of McKechnie Avenue, you know, if we wanted to say, well, we're going to incorporate them into the hamlet, we can go ahead and do that. Yeah.
So Ann, go ahead.
And I think further to Councillor Vanderveen's comment, see, I got it right. We have to kind of think all the time that these planning documents are living documents and are subject to change, and that's why I think we review them so often, given the changes, like you said, in case there was a very large industry that came in near a hamlet. So we have to kind of think of these as, you know, proposed, but also flexible documents.
Yeah, just to follow up with that, I do have a schedule. Once these have been, if council, you know, finds that this is an acceptable way to move forward, every 5-7 years, we're going to kind of go through them, say, okay, is this still relevant? What's changed? What do we need to, you know, have we seen a large amount of growth? Do we need to adjust how we're looking at it? So yeah, that's why we try to keep them, all of our planning documents, fairly relevant, so that we're not kind of be like, oh, well, no, it was done 20 years ago and that's what it's going to be. We know that we have to kind of make sure that we're always looking at them, because yeah, if something happens, we want to make sure that we're adapting it and bringing it forward to the residents as opportunities.
So the one thing about expanding the boundaries of a hamlet is if you go outside of the hamlet, you're not eligible, or at least you weren't, unless they've changed, eligible for grant dollars from the provincial government for any additional lands you add to the size of the hamlet. And I don't know whether that's changed or not, but that's the way it was.
That
So-
could still stand.
Yeah. So in other words, if you wanted to expand the wastewater treatment, for those people outside, you know, the fee is more than, or not applicable for government funding.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Where are the sewer loops, Susan? They're towards the building?
They are right up in the southwest 8, 10, 21. So they're quite a distance. They were quite thought out when they put them there, so there is room to grow. We're not going to run into that boundary issue like we have in Shaughnessy. And there is room on that parcel too, I think, for growth, because the county owns that entire 40 acres.
If that would happen, are the lines and everything big enough going to the sewer plant and everything that would be able to accommodate significant growth?
That's all something that would have to be looked at as the bigger picture, right? So we would have to look and see what's existing there, what can be accommodated. Is it just the size of the lagoons, or is it things like looking at the system in place? So.
Okay.
Any other comments or discussion?
Are there any other questions or discussion at all? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think with all the potential for growth there, that we should get into kind of step one of what we would need to do for sewage to expand the hamlet. Early at the start, it mentioned there used to be 800, a population of about 800. Is that kind of on the same footprint, like, or do you like to have
Yeah.
pictures from back in then?
I'm sure there might be some historical pictures, but yes, that is the footprint of like where Diamond City always has been. Yeah.
Population of that?
Yep, yeah. We have a lot of areas that used to be quite large. Commerce area, which isn't even a hamlet anymore, but it had like 600 people, and you wouldn't know looking today. There's nobody there, so.
What was the name of that one, Hillary?
Commerce?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
No, that one's just by Shootin's Feedlot on Highway 25.
Commerce Road there, yeah.
Commerce Road, yeah. It used to be a giant hamlet. You never would know it today. They just bulldozed everything down and consolidated it all together.
Coal thing there, or shale thing there?
Yeah.
It was a coal mine, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there used to be one over there just up from Provence River bottom land too, up on top of the hill there.
Okay.
Yeah. They're smattered all over, and then
There's nothing
they
there.
just fold.
Yeah.
It is.
So we have a recommendation on the to accept the Hamlet of Diamond City as a guiding document for future growth. Is there any other thing to add to that? Somebody like to make that motion? Ken? Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. Let's do the Hamlet of Shaughnessy next.
So as I mentioned before, we did these two Hamlet studies together, and we did the surveys and that type of process at the same time. So in October, we did send out a survey to the Shaughnessy residents. So that was 147 surveys that were sent out. And we did get a response back. We got 50 responses back, which is 34% overall response rate, which is actually still relatively decent for a Hamlet. The type of survey that we sent out. The comments that we got in from them, there's people once again enjoyed the sense of community that they have there, that it's fairly quiet. The concerns expressed were with regards to the maintenance and upkeep of some of the roads. Unsightly premises are a large concern within Shaughnessy. And then once again, the animals running at large, I guess that's the problem. One of them had cats and one of them had dogs running around. So, I think that's kind of common in smaller communities. People let their animals run a little bit more freely than maybe they should. And so that was something that we'll probably work with David on looking at, just to ensure that maybe some educational items just to ensure people keeping their pets in their yards. The draft study was posted on the county's website at the end of December, and we also sent out a follow-up letter also to the Shaughnessy residents, giving them the opportunity to review the growth study. We also sent in with that one an informative just with regards to kind of road maintenance projects that we'd had going on, the animal control bylaw, other items and phone numbers that we had available for that residents could call if they had some concerns with regards to those aspects. And we didn't get any responses back. There was no comments received with regards to the draft study. Other than we did have one lady who had some suggestions for the park area, just to, when we're looking at redoing the tennis courts in the park, she had suggested maybe putting up a pickleball facility, because that's quite popular these days. So, I mean, for feedback, that's actually pretty good. We want kind of things that are tangible that we can work towards. And so I think hopefully we'll with the type of consultation and involvement we've had with our hamlets, we'll get more of that type of feedback when we're looking at, say, redeveloping the parks and things over time. The final Shaughnessy growth study did address the existing state of the hamlet with a focus on looking at where growth could go. In Shaughnessy, there's really nowhere to grow within the hamlet anymore. All of the lots have been developed, minus one that's vacant, and there's more opportunities kind of on the eastern and southern edges of the hamlet for growth. With these types of, when we have no opportunities for infill, we obviously rely on those landowners to determine when they would want to look at the opportunity for growth of the hamlet. So it's something that we can contact them and talk to them about, this is, if council thinks that this is a good way to move forward, that we can contact them and say, this is the plan. If you ever have, if you ever want to consider this, the county will work with them on developing the plans to help facilitate that. As with Diamond City, we would probably want to look at the capacity of the existing lagoons. These ones were built in 1977, so there is a bit of age on them. So we'd want to look to see what the capacity, if there would need to be any upgrades for any future development. We probably want to be a bit proactive, as with Diamond City, just to kind of see where we sit today, so that if somebody does come in, that we're not having to do these studies, which can take quite some time to do. We want to make sure that we have some information more readily available. And I'll work with Jeremy and Devin on those items to make sure that we're fitting them into the budget in future years. So with that, most of the growth that we saw within, as I mentioned, for Shaughnessy would be to the south with some opportunities to the east going towards the coulee. There's some residents in Shaughnessy who said, don't grow the Hamlet anymore, just keep it the way it is. But, it would be probably beneficial to see some growth in Shaughnessy over time. It grows it'll probably be slower growth, but it's something that once we get more growth, we can see a little bit more commercial development. We've already seen, since we've sold the 2 industrial parcels in Shaughnessy, they've already started construction on that building, as some of you who may have driven by have noted. So that's a really good positive sign. We also know that another one of the commercial landowners there is looking to do some redevelopment on his parcel. So I think we're seeing an uptick in that. So that might actually draw more in. So growth is a real possibility in the Hamlet, I think, at this point in time. And with regards to kind of the growth plan, if you look at page 29 on your agenda package, you can kind of see where we anticipate kind of some possible residential and commercial and light industrial type growth in the Hamlet. So we did have some good conversations with Alberta Environment with regards to the location of the lagoons, which were probably not appropriately located 44 years ago. But they've conceded that any development, if say a house were to be, if there was a fire or somebody wanted to redevelop a house within that 300-meter buffer, that they would be able to do so without any, without having to do some intense engineering studies to justify it. So Jeremy helped work on that with Alberta Environment, and so we're happy to hear that we can, that those residents have some, security in knowing that their properties are still, viable residential parcels. That was a really big consideration for this particular area. So with that, if there are any, does council see any changes that they would want, or questions about the growth areas that we've kind of proposed?
Any questions? Yes, Klaus, go ahead.
Well, I just had a comment here. I had 2 people call me that thought that we were going to be doing the work that was suggested on the comments, and before that, this came out. I talked to Ann about what the next plans were there. I think we had 4 different that they were not going to start till 2024. Yeah. But anyway, they were very disappointed that what they suggested they thought that was going to be done right away.
Oh, okay.
This year. Yeah.
I
So
think-
that was basically streets and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to send out that information bulletin too, just to let them know, we have the asset management plan that we look at when we're going to start, when we're looking at different pieces of infrastructure for upgrading things like that. So we tried to, it's not necessarily a land use thing, but we really tried to look at it kind of comprehensively, get them that information. I think, when we put these things out, that's always the risk that people think, oh, I made a suggestion, it's going to happen right away. That I was hoping that we kind of got the message out that we're actively working on these items to make, to improve it. So, but we'll keep doing that. We'll keep working at getting that information out to residents. And if you have anybody who has that, you can always send them, if it's land use or whatever, send them my way, or if it's with roads, Devin and Jeremy can definitely answer those questions too.
So just send it through me and I'll disperse.
Thank you, Ann.
Claus.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think that's a great idea, and maybe even use our county connections for that or whatever. Something
Yeah,
like
and I
that-
think
that
we're really trying to work with Maddie on getting those educational pieces out there, just information about what's going on, when it's happening. I think that's been really valuable in the last little while. I think that's been a useful tool. So.
And we do have the actual map that shows every year what our capital projects are going to be. That's now online, it's interactive. So that's another place that you could point the residents to as
So
well.
that would be good for us to just remind them that they can go to the website and find those things there. Another thing that I kind of missed there, it did say that at one point there were 400 mine workers working in the mines there. But what was the largest amount of population in Shaughnessy at a certain time?
I don't know if Steve captured that particular
Because I only found that there were 400 at one time in the coal mine. there.
800 seems to ring a bell. 800, I think it was 800 in Shaughnessy. And kind of.
So about the same as Diamond City then.
Yeah.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that page 30 map, there's a 75-meter railway residential development setback. Even though there's no railway there, is that still in effect, or is it kind of for the the potential contaminants in the soil?
Because that rail line is still owned by CP Rail, we still apply that 75-meter setback for residents because they still do store cars on the rail line, so there could be noise and issues with that. We haven't, in our bylaws, addressed the non-active rail line, so this portion, but that's something that I know it's come up before, especially by Colehurst area, for setbacks that, maybe that's something that we should kind of adjust back. So maybe it's a little less because it's not obviously that there's, active trains running past there, multiple times a day. It's more intermittent when things are happening there. So I think that's a good point.
Okay, I guess I kind of forgot, that's kind of the end of the line. Right?
It is, yeah, this is right where it starts, yeah. The county closed that section right up to, just past the golf course there. So this is kind of where that line ends. So they still occasionally store their cars there, which I know some contention with some residences.
Claus?
Yeah, that was part of, that was my question too. With the rail line there, it was, I know they don't park any cars there anymore right at the moment. And
They do from time to
they
time.
do still? Okay.
Yeah.
But the county bought all that land years ago going more north and east of the railroad and everything. So why haven't we pursued that any further? Was it because, well, that was before my time, but.
It's not, it still isn't. Yeah, they didn't want to sell it.
Yeah.
Exactly for the reason we just discussed, storage.
Yeah, and I don't know that that was necessarily the most successful venture, just because it took a long time for that to be resolved too. So it was good for some landowners, but
So they actually did close it, and they took down the traffic signals on Highway 23 or 25? 23.
Well, they
And then they had to put them back up because they're using it for storage.
Because
Yeah, on
that
25,
gravel
yeah.
road, they took everything away there, and they
Yeah.
took
Yeah.
the rails out of there, so they can't go any further than up to that
yeah,
one gravel road just outside Shaughnessy.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions on this? Go ahead, Claus.
Okay, then I'll move the recommendation, County Council accept the Hamlet of Shaughnessy as a guiding document for future growth and development within the adjacent to the Hamlet of Shaughnessy.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried.
Thank you.
And it is lunch. Thanks very much.
And so, under the direct controls that we have for the landfill, County Council acts as the development authority for any development permit application. And so you're the decision maker for any applications at the landfill. We send out the notices, we do the processing, and then you can determine if it's suitable to approve the permit or not. The proposed accessory building that will house the mechanical and electrical components for the landfill gas extraction process will be approximately 100 meters squared. This building is part of, it's kind of integral to the whole facility because it houses all the components. The city will be setting up, as I mentioned, a pipeline infrastructure at the existing landfill to capture the gases that are building up from the landfill materials. Landfill gases are a natural part of the decomposition and can be captured and then processed. The process also requires a flare, which would be located near the accessory building. This is part of the city's initiative to encourage sustainable practices by reducing the amount of greenhouse gases that leave the landfill site and then make use of those gases as an alternative energy source. We did circulate the application to other county departments, Alberta Transportation, the Irrigation District, and there was no concerns received with regards to this particular application. We feel that this proposed use is in line with those that can be located at the landfill, and it meets all the required setbacks of the direct control district. So our recommendation is that county council would approve development permit 20-21, that 2021-008, with the conditions as noted on the permit that's attached to the report, which is on page 12 of your agenda package. So the conditions that we would propose is that the landfill waste facility and accessory building be located as per their submitted site plan, and it's kind of centralized on the landfill site, if you notice from the map. The applicant shall obtain all the necessary approvals and authorizations required under the Alberta Protection and Enhancement Act, and we provide the information for Alberta Environment and Parks. But if they're doing this, they've already contacted them, because there are requirements under EPA to do that. Any further expansion would require additional approval from the Development Authority, that being County Council. Approval of the buildings, of the building permits must be obtained prior to commencement, so they'd have to obtain their safety codes permits. And any planned work in the county right-of-way, like a driveway or entrance, would require separate approval from the Director of Public Operations. So those are the conditions that we propose for this particular application.
Any questions? Klaus?
I don't know if you covered that, but don't we want to know what they are going to use the energy for?
I don't know, like, it would probably go back into the running of the buildings on the property, like as a gas.
Okay, because I think that would be for us to, I think we would like to know that
Okay.
for environmental
It's-
purposes or whatever.
No, that's through Alberta Environment and Parks.
Okay.
It doesn't really have anything
Okay.
to do with the county.
Okay.
So are they going to generate electricity would be my question. Or are they just going to use it for heat or
Well,
what?
they would be converting the gas into energy, so electrical energy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the
So
housing
the
is.
process
for.
similar to what's out at in the Rave Industrial Park?
Yep.
Sort of.
It's like the biogas facility or a natural gas to energy conversion system. So it's just going back into the electrical grid and more than likely being used on their site.
Any other questions? Need a motion then. Bob?
All of the development have to pay for electrical gas inspector system, 2021 -0.
Hey,
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, let's do development permit, application 2021-014, a litter fence, same facility.
Yep, so this, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This next development permit application, once again, is at the landfill site. They want to replace and expand their existing litter fences, and if you've been out to the landfill, you'll note that those are fairly tall structures, 30, 40 feet in height. And as per the direct control, they would require approval of the expansion of those by County Council as the development authority. The landfill site has existing litter fences that reduce the amount of refuse that will blow off from the landfill operations. And the extension of this fencing and replacement of some of the existing fencing, I think taller fencing, will help reduce the amount of refuse that blows from the landfill onto adjacent lands, including adjacent farmyards and farm, agricultural titles, like farmland. So this one is pretty basic. We did circulate it to Alberta Transportation, St. Mary's Irrigation District, Alberta Environment and Parks, and other county departments, and no concerns were received with regards to the application that was being proposed. And we would recommend that development permit 2021-014 with conditions be approved. And you can see on the maps that they've provided on page 9 where the location of those fences will be.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does staff ever get complaints about garbage blowing off the site?
I've never myself received any complaints from anybody with regards to that. I think they do a pretty good job of containing everything. And just as I think as the landfill kind of expands and grows as per the plan, that this is just a requirement to upgrade and expand that fencing to keep that relationship going with the adjacent landowners.
Can I just add something to that? When we were having conversations and we were working on the lease agreement with the landfill, and I did a couple of little tours out there, there was a landowner adjacent right beside, and there were quite a few issues, but the city employee who's running the landfill worked really hard with that adjacent landowner, and I think has been able to alleviate a lot of his concerns. This was about a year and a half ago, and there hasn't seemed to be any recurring concerns since then. But he was quite frustrated for a while, and the manager at the landfill did make sure that he worked with him, talked to him to, alleviate some of that. So it seems to have improved over the past year.
So I know that it used to be a big issue out there, but since they put in those fences, it sure has helped quite a bit. I think you get probably more complaints now from people not tarping their loads when they're going to the landfill than you do from the landfill. Because along 43rd Street, Dan, that piece there north of Rave is just terrible.
Yeah, it can get pretty bad there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Klaus.
Well, I think it's a great idea, so I'll recommend that the county council approve the development permit 2021-014 with conditions.
Any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And G 22.7 is development permit application 2021-013 hydrovac waste facility.
So this is the last application that was submitted by the city for at the landfill. The hydrovac facility would be located kind of in the existing north east area of the landfill, so on kind of an area that's not currently developed. The proposed facility would be approximately 3,800 square meters, and the facility would have 2 soil drying pads, one for clean soil and one for the contaminated soil. The city doesn't anticipate that a large use will be used for the contaminated, but it's provided just in case there's some suspicious loads that are coming in, just to make sure that it's not intermingling with clean areas. The facility will consist of an access road, an approach pad, a tipping pad, slope soil draining pad, and 2-stage evaporation ponds. It will also include a monitoring pipe to be installed at the contaminated soil site area so that they're monitoring what potential contaminants are getting into or that would be deposited there. All of the surfaces of the facility will be constructed from concrete, except for the second stage of the evaporation pond. The second stage of the pond will include a 0.5 thick meter compacted clay liner. And all of these requirements go through Alberta Environment and Parks. There's some very strict stipulations on hydrovac facilities in the province, so they have to follow those criteria. So these are all criteria that any hydrovac facility has to follow. The majority of the truck traffic that would be using would be using the existing roadway that accesses the landfill. So that's it's Range Road 21-4, and so that's like 28th Street in the city going north. And that's the paved road, so I think we have an agreement with the city for the maintenance of that particular road. So they take care of that road because it leads to the landfill, so there wouldn't be too many concerns from a traffic perspective for the county. We did circulate this application to the other county departments, Alberta Transportation, the Irrigation District, Alberta Environment and Parks, and there is no concerns or concerns expressed with regards to this particular application. The proposed use, we feel, is in line with what would occur at a landfill. It's probably a really good location for this type of facility versus somewhere else. We also, another thing that we did note is that this is becoming a more common activity in and around the county and the region. And if there's more disposal sites available, it just makes it easier for developers and landowners to be able to dispose of this type of waste without having to go too far. So with that, we do recommend that development permit 2021-013 with conditions be approved.
Any questions? No questions? Motion? Ken? To approve as recommended? Okay. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary. Okay, corporate services. G 3.1, Old Man Watershed Council, request for funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, there is a request that was received from the Old Man Watershed Council in the amount of $4,866, which is 47 cents per capita, to contribute towards their efforts. The Old Man Watershed, can you hear me? Would that be better?
That's fine.
Okay,
yes.
sorry. I feel like I'm yelling, but the Old Man Watershed Council is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to keep water and land healthy and safe. Donations received have supported their organization in over 60 restoration projects, directly benefiting the health of land and water. More information and detail of those efforts is included in the attached letter. The Watershed Council is asking for these funds again this year, which Council has contributed to since 2004, I believe. And it is the same amount as last year, so there was no increase to their request for 2021. Historically, Council has funded this through the Council's operating budget and could do so again in the 2021 budget if they decide to do so. An alternative, of course, would be to no longer contribute to the Watershed Council, but administration has made this recommendation as the county has been making contributions for many years and sees the value and supports the cause of the Watershed Council.
Any discussion? Questions? I think it's a very worthwhile organization, and they're doing a lot of work, so. Yeah. So are we not on camera, or are we just?
Yeah.
Oh, we're on the big new camera?
Yep.
So were we on during our discussion at lunch?
No.
Oh, good. Any questions on this one? Seeing none, could we have a motion? Morris.
Funding towards the water council, Old Man Water Council.
Any further discussion or anything? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Dwayne? I think he was for a while. Hasn't been for a while. G 3.2. So to answer your question, for rural municipalities, the representative on there right now is the Cardston Reeve, what's his name?
Vester?
How's that?
Vester?
Pardon?
I'm sorry, maybe is his name Jim Vester?
No, he's not the Reeve anymore. It's a Bullock, but I can't think of what his first name is. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
Financial
Thank you.
report.
Mr. Chairman and Council, I wanted to bring forward just a summary to date of of the financials as of December 31st. Bearing in mind, though, that this is not the completion, year-end is not done as of yet, but I want to bring something forward prior to the audit. It's not something we've historically done, but I think just the year being what it is and moving forward, it's a good idea and gives council a bit of information prior to bringing forward any surpluses or deficits that we may have and the audited financials. So I wanted to do that this year. So again, this is prior to completion. There are still some entries and items that will probably be discovered through the year-end process. However, I did do my best to ensure that all of the known transfers, be it through the budget or by resolution, I tried to capture in this, but there may be things, miscoding, entries, etc., that you find through the process. Also, Anne had asked, and I believe we had mentioned to council that I would also do a presentation on reserves, just a bit of a quick overview. So we'll do that, I guess, bearing time, because I know that there's another meeting following council today. So we'll see where we're at once we get through the financials, and I'll let the chairman decide. So just to start with, on page 3 of the report, I have a bit of a summary here I'll just go over. So as mentioned, this is an estimated projection of the county's financials to the end of 2020, as the year-end financial process and entries are still underway, which will result in changes to the final balances. The projections are based on the operations and include known entries such as grant funding and transfers to and from reserves as budgeted or made by resolution throughout the year. The included information is meant to provide council with some highlights from each department from 2020 and a snapshot of the operating budgets to date. An overall surplus at this time has been estimated at around $322,000, which indicates 97.92% of the overall tax support that was levied in 2020 was utilized. The primary reason for the surplus is related to additional revenues earned in both planning and development and emergency services, as well as other contributing factors such as some in salaries, travel and subsistence savings by council, as council took a 10% reduction for the majority of 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, and we're not attending many conventions or training sessions throughout the county in any departments. The county kept track of the supplies required for COVID, specifically sanitation, personal protective equipment, signage, etc., and those costs came to almost $33,000. That does not include any IT equipment or additional supplies that may have been acquired due to the working from home protocols. For the most part, IT was in a good position with equipment, but there were a few items, a printer or something that may have need to be purchased. That's all covered within his department and will be funded through his operating reserve should there be a deficit there. As always, supervisors remain diligent in monitoring their budgets throughout the years, even more specifically with COVID in place, and operations ran as usual for the most part. I don't know if there's any questions, or you just want me to keep going?
Keep going.
Okay, so I'll just direct you to page 13 because it's the financial snapshot. I won't go through the details of the written portion of the report, but it just basically speaks to activities and accomplishments throughout the year in each of the departments. So as you can see at the top half of page 13, it's just a breakdown of the projected surpluses and deficits. As mentioned, the council department has a large surplus, and again, this is mainly due to a 10% decrease in wages as well as the travel and subsistence. There was no FCM or AUMAs or those kinds of conferences taking place for council to attend. CAO's office also has a projected surplus, and this has to do somewhat with staffing changes with the executive administrator position, as well as training and subsistence. Ag services, you're seeing a deficit there, which I know in that department, generally there's a surplus. However, there was a grant reduction in 2020 of over $135,000 from what was anticipated or what we have previously received. So that's a huge hit to the department. Fleet services isn't showing a surplus or a deficit because, as council knows, that department, as well as IT, is self-funding. I did indicate into the report what we anticipated the transfer would be. So I could look that up for you. I can do it for IT as well, but it is in the written portion of the report under the fleet departments. But at the end of the day, it will balance to zero. Public Works was very close to budget with a $34,000 anticipated surplus, which is quite minimal, and that may go up or down depending on allocations as we get through year end. But basically, budget was spent throughout the 2020 year. The infrastructure department, bit of a deficit. Most of this has to do with technical and professional expenditures, such as engineering or different plans and oversight that Devin needed to have looked after. The utility department, as you know, the $327,000 is what we collect for taxes. Otherwise, that department also is self-funding for the most part. There is an anticipated surplus, however, due to water sales of around $260,000 that will just go directly to the reserve as per previous council direction in that department. Assessment and taxation, minor deficit, and this is basically related to the designated industrial property assessment costs that we pay to the province. Just a little bit off there in the budget versus actual. Finance department is also looking at a deficit, and this is largely due to additional building maintenance and a couple projects that took place this year. Just things that needed to be done for maintenance purposes and or safety, such as the parking lot. IT department, again, is self-funding. Believe there to be a slight deficit due to, as mentioned earlier, some of the additional costs related to COVID, but those will be funded through the IT operating reserve. Community services, a surplus. This was mostly related to PD training, some reduction to economic development, advertising, and other tasks that have generally taken place or been related to more in-person stuff. So there's some savings there. Planning and development and emergency services, as mentioned in the summary, both received higher than anticipated revenues in a couple of their areas. And ORS costs were lower than budgeted in 2020. Another surplus portion of the emergency services is when the budget was passed in December of 2019. We had put in costs for a part-time bylaw officer, which we didn't use. So that's part of that surplus as well. Instead, our CPO extended his hours for a seasonal period, and it was covered that way. I wanted to mention as well within emergency services for 2020, the province did not or has not to date invoiced municipalities for the policing costs, but an email has been shared that Anne shared with me that we should anticipate seeing an invoice here in the next month or so. Therefore, and I will bring this forward when I bring the surpluses forward, my recommendation would be to transfer those to a policing reserve, and then the funds will sit there and we'll have them available, plus what we've anticipated for this year to when the province issues its invoice. I'm not sure how they're issuing it, if it's going to be just a 2020, 2021 portion that equals the 243, if it will be higher, lower. They haven't really provided a lot of information. So that's the...
I would think they're a little unclear on how they're doing it themselves.
Yeah, it was kind of vague, the email, so... I also just wanted to add that tax collections, as of the end
imagine that.
Yeah. Tax collections to the end of the year were at 94% and business tax at 96%. So even despite the pandemic, our collections still remain relatively high. So I don't know if I'm sure there are some questions before I get into the rest of the report.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the utilities for the extra water sales, would there also be extra water expense if that department is cost recovery?
Mr. Chairman, through to Council Campbell, there is extra expense, but the way our rate system is set up, we collect more than what it costs us, I suppose. So in order to ensure that we are at cost recovery or better.
Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The building repairs, like for the finance and administration, that was, we did not decide to do anything to this building here, did we? Because of what maybe we're thinking about doing?
That, you're correct, but there were some things that were a safety issue that we had to deal with. They weren't large structural issues.
We also had some furnace issues this past year that we had to take care of.
So just one question, when you talked about personal protective equipment, does that farmed out to each department as an expense, or how does that work?
So generally speaking, yes, and it will be in 2021. I just wanted to collect a total for all of it. So every Picture Butte and this office, as well as Coaldale, all has masks, gloves, and wipes and different things for sanitization. And then I believe, Jeremy can correct me, I think the equipment operators also have stuff separately.
We're talking two separate items. I mean, we've got personal protective equipment, which is like our blanket vest coveralls that we talked about earlier, and then PPE that Jen is signaling out as part of the ongoing operations that we have with COVID for cover gloves, mixture face masks, and other related stuff, sanitary items.
So for the year we just finished, it's not allocated to any department, the 32 or 33,000 you had mentioned? It's just an expense somewhere, or?
So we ran the expense through emergency services as a disaster because we were unsure when it began whether or not there would be any recovery from the province. I don't think there's going to be because of how long it's lasted. And that department also had the room to sort of absorb some of those costs, with the exception of the IT related. But moving forward, all of the costs will run through each department's, I guess, like janitorial or miscellaneous supplies budget.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, sure. Okay, just quickly then, just to wrap up, I did also include a quick summary of investments. So we're sitting pretty good. We do have pretty much enough funds to cover what we say we have in our reserves. So the county in that regard is in a good position. Rates are, with the exception of the Wood Gundy investments, are going down. We're seeing them come down significantly. So we're kind of hanging on to see what the future holds, hoping they go back up. Page 16 is just a quick summary of the grants. So these are the 2020 grants that were budgeted for and have been approved and or received. As you can see there under Ag Services, we had budgeted the $259,360, which is the amount that we have received for several years, but only received $123,907 of that. So that was a bit of a hit, as council's aware. And then the last page is just the capital projects update. These are the 2020 capital projects. This is also information that we share with the public on our website, and it just gives you a quick snapshot of what the projects were, what their current status is, and their budget versus actuals to date. So most of these have been completed. There are a few that are either there's a holdback pending on it, but for the most part, they were all completed within the year.
Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On some of those infrastructure projects, the paving like Kip Road, the Agri-Business Road, Range Road 21-1, were those all under budget by that much, or is that kind of the holdback that's required there?
Warming up.
No, he was hitting the pipes.
Maybe knocking the ice off.
I'll have Devin follow up. Some of it is related to holdbacks that are still outstanding. And there were a couple projects that were under budget as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, pretty much what Jen said with the holdbacks remaining. There was a couple under. The Monarch water tower, I think, was the only one that went over budget. And then there is one project remaining, which is the McCain's Access Road. They got snowed out last fall, so that'll be completed this spring.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, Jen. Do we have a
Thank you.
motion just to receive for information?
Move so.
Clause? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
We decided to put off the reserves until the next meeting so we can have a more fulsome discussion. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, let's move down to G 4.1, Picture Butte Recreational Funding Agreement and ICF Agreement. Yeah.
Oops, I need this. Hello, good afternoon. So, as I think council is aware, we've been working on ICF agreements and recreation agreements with both the surrounding municipalities and the internal municipalities, any municipality that we border on. For about a year and a half, the county has been working with the urbans, and this includes the CAOs of the county and all the CAOs from the urbans, Barrons, Nobleford, Pitcher Butte, Coaldale, and Colehurst. We put forward to them a recreation amount of approximately $250,000 with an increase of 1.5 each year. And the urbans came back to us with an agreement. Now, everybody has signed this agreement with the exception of the town of Pitcher Butte, and they have returned the county's payment for the 2020 year for recreation funding in the amount of $103,343.97. They feel that this amount is not sufficient. It's unfortunate because as one of the architects of the recreation agreement, we did talk to them and meet with them, and recently at their January 27th regular meeting of council, they turned down signing both the recreation agreement and the ICF funding. The recommendation for the report is that the county of Lethbridge County advise the town of Pitcher Butte to wait until the April 1st deadline of the ICF and then let the province tribute an arbitrator to us. The biggest concern with this whole issue is that not only is it going to cost us the money of an arbitrator to go to this, but there's some frustration from, I think, administration's perspective, because we worked in good faith with the other CAOs. We went forward with the agreement that they proposed, and the reluctance to sign the agreement is disconcerting, to say the least. The other issue is while we are still focusing on this recreation piece, which everybody else has agreed to, we are not able then to look at other regionalization, one being fire, but there's also other possibilities of things that we could do together. So that's my report.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Least I can say.
Go ahead, Gloss.
Yeah, and because we're gonna have the extra cost, it looks like it's gonna be about, what is it, 30,000 for us or something like that?
We've tried to get a cost on an arbitrator, and it's somewhere between 30 to 50,000. And the challenge is too, is that Pitcher Butte keeps saying that they want to negotiate with us. We entered into this agreement in good faith. It's an agreement with all 5 urbans. So one thing we've continually told Pitcher Butte is if we renegotiate this piece with them, we also have to renegotiate with the other urbans. So the fact that Pitcher Butte wants more funding, if we, as a county, which of course, with the downloading of the with the policing costs and whatnot that's been downloaded to us, that amount, if we increase the amount higher than 250 spread among the 5 urbans, that would also be dispersed. So Pitcher Butte would be getting, their portion of the amount. So I think it would still be minimal, depending on what the arbitrator comes back with, if the arbitrator even comes back on Pitcher Butte's side, because that's all undetermined. Really, the way I look at it, in a fairness quotient, the other 4 have signed, so I can't see the arbitrator coming back and siding with Pitcher Butte. But
No, I can't either, and I just wanted to say, with the 103,000 that they did not accept, they can't expect to get that, even though the arbitrator sides with us, that they get the 103 from last year, they forfeited on that because of,
Well, the arbitrator could say status quo, and then we would forward that 2020 amount, right? But there's still, that was the 2020 amount, there was 2021, it was a 5-year agreement, so.
It's a game, it's like playing cards. You win or you lose. Yeah, Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the arbitrator, are they appointed from municipal affairs?
Yes, yes. And we have been in contact with municipal affairs. The perception I get from Pitcher Butte is that they want to do this now. But the challenge from our perspective is we have a lot of other things that we're dealing with, and one of the main is the regional fire provision services, which needs to be dealt with. So if we go ahead with this, this is going to, we won't have the time to deal with the fire and this recreation. That's why my recommendation is to put it off until April 1st, because we have upcoming fire meetings, and at least we can get those moving forward.
Klaus?
well, you probably look for some direction too, but I think we made it loud and clear that we were not going to renegotiate what we had in place and what we had negotiated with the other four. So I think we just have to let this move on and just go up to the April 1st, and if they haven't decided that they would still like the money, then we're just going to have an arbitrator.
So you need a motion?
Yes.
if I may, Mr. Chairman? You need a motion to defer this till April the 1st?
Yep.
I'll move so.
So how are you writing that motion? What would you write down for that, just out of curiosity?
I'll read it to you if I'm just gonna, strangely enough, no issues with your iPad and then issues with your iPad. There we go. That the Council of Lethbridge County advise the Council of the Town of Pitcher Butte that the county will wait until the April 1st deadline for ICF completion and let the province of Alberta select an arbitrator.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that motion? Yes, Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of thoughts. I know I can ramble, so I'll start, I'll try to be to the point. I think from what Jen has just showed us in the financial report, it's that we, the county as a municipality, we're walking a tight rope here. There seems to be a misconception to some that we have, I think, many more financial resources at our disposal than, quite frankly, is the reality. We're facing a lot of hurdles. We have our own commitments to meet, and as Jen pointed out, those commitments continue to grow. There's being more downloaded, and our costs of operation are going up. Through the ICF process, I feel that we as a council allocated a very significant financial contribution to recreational opportunities for our urban partners. I think the reality of the situation is we all have to live within our means, and I guess I think it's all been touched on, but my hope is that the Town of Pitcher Butte Council will realize the opportunity that's before them and utilize those funds towards the betterment of their community and our region as a whole. Our intention in allocating these funds was to provide recreational opportunities within these urbans, full well knowing that our residents and our county ratepayers would utilize these, as well as the residents within these urbans. So I really, really hope that they will, the council takes a good hard look at this again. I just don't see how we end up in a better place going through the arbitration. I really struggle with that. I think we have an opportunity to put a bow on this, move forward, and work collaboratively. We need to stop butting heads. We need to be better partners. And I hope that people will see that we're making this effort. And in no way are we trying to short any of our partners. That's never our intention. The reality is that we only have so much to work with. And like I say, I just really hope that that we can move past this and start to do some good things together. Thank you.
I think you're right, Councillor T. Campbell, and the biggest, most concerning aspect for us is that this provincial budget that's coming up in a few weeks is not, I don't believe, going to be kind or pretty to municipalities, so it's going to be either further tightening of all of our belts. So I think it's unfortunate that this has been rejected.
Well, I think that when the NDP government put this action in place, there was a lot of things that clearly did not occur by thought or something, that because we really have no say as to what kind of recreational facilities a urban type municipality will build, and yet we're expected to almost contribute towards it irregardless of whether we can or can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
Klaus?
I think it's really simple. I mean, we made it loud and clear for them where we stood. And I think the ball is in their court, and, just see what comes out of it.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just a question, I'm not sure, it's probably not in there. What was the vote of their council? Was it unanimous or?
I didn't find that out. I would have been curious to that too, because,
What I told you at one time?
yep.
That's why it was unanimous, and
And it was interesting because the actual motion that was defeated is worded like this: to accept Lethbridge County's proposed recreation funding agreement and check for 2020. And it was defeated, so I'm not sure by how much.
Yes, go ahead, Klaus.
What I heard, and it's not never written in stone, but that it was not unanimous.
There was what? It was not
It was not
unanimous.
unanimous.
Yeah.
it was what?
It was not unanimous.
It was not unanimous, yeah.
Well, that's yeah. You was told by the same person that probably.
No, it's not unanimous.
Oh, anyways, is there any further discussion on the matter? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, G 4.2, and that's the coal policy. So at the last Mayors and Reeves meeting, it got into a very, very heated debate between the two MLAs who were in attendance, or three MLAs who were in attendance, and the Mayors and Reeves, and it was very evident that they were thoroughly disgusted, and I guess the best word to use is totally pissed off at the government over the fact that there was absolutely no groups formed or consulting the public in any way, shape, or manner of removing the coal policy of 1976. And there's been a lot of scientific data done and collected, and it seemed to be ignored. And there's a huge discrepancy of whether they're correct in their scientific data that they did collect, and who did collect it and to what purpose it was going to be used for. Basically, at the end of the day, I finally had to put an end to the discussion because it was getting very, very ugly, and there's absolutely no support from any municipality to proceed any further without potentially going into some legal action against the Alberta government. So in the next Monday, the government reversed its decision on the policy and reinstated it with the thought that in the future they would reevaluate the policy and modernize it. Already there are a lot of people talking about what exactly does that mean, and is that meaning they're still going to look at coal mining? So I don't think this issue is done for by any means. I would say probably 90% of the surrounding municipalities who are in this area for Southwest Mayors and Reeves are going to forward correspondence to the government saying that they are not in favor of having open pit mining in the mountains in any way, shape, or form. So I think I'm sure every municipality was in attendance, is putting this on their council agenda for the next meeting and deciding whether they are going to send a letter asking for the same thing. So that's why I asked for it to be put on. Ann, do you have anything else to
I
add?
just wanted to say too, those letters have already started moving forward, and there is also a component in the consultation piece or lack of consultation.
Yes.
And while the provincial government will say that they consulted on this, none of the municipalities feel that they were consulted or not consulted enough.
So the one thing that the mayor of High River made very clear was the reason why the Australian company is here is twofold. One, the royalties are much cheaper in Canada and Alberta for mining coal, and the Chinese government has put a ban on the importation of coal from Australia because they're having a fight over quite a few other things, and they'll only accept coal from Australian companies that don't produce it in Australia. So whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But that was a very big factor in his arguments. So I think
Yeah, I'm not sure if council wants to submit a letter or if that's the direction.
yeah, just, I'll finish up, then you can
Yeah.
go. So the other thing was, the biggest part of the discussion was over selenium. I think that's the way you say it. And there is some new technology coming out, but it's not 100% capable of capturing all of it and keeping it from going into the water stream. Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that maybe we should hold off with sending a letter, because I think they have put things on hold back to 1976. They promised they were going to consult with the people of Alberta and the municipalities. So I think maybe we should hold off, see what they come up with and what they're asking for, so that we can then give our input of what we think is necessary, instead of being proactive in that way. I think maybe we could, it could backfire for us too.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with that. They've rescinded their last decision, so once they get consulting, then I think we can provide input then at that point, or as a region then at that point, or however it needs to be.
So I guess, and I forgot one thing, was the other thing was, there was quite a bit of discussion about water licenses, and Shannon Phillips actually answered the question. So the government has allocated for another 200,000 acres of water to be delivered to irrigation. And their concern from a lot of municipalities was, so the water for the coal mine, does it come from that allocation? And there was no clear answer as to that, because the water above a certain elevation in the mountains is a federal government response, and what they can or can't do with it has nothing to do with us. And the lower than that elevation, it's the Alberta Environment who does the allocations, and remember, 50% of the water has to go to Saskatchewan and beyond. So it's very complex.
Yeah.
Rest of you think we should wait off on a letter?
Well, if you read all the documents that are coming out there, they've never said that they, even when they come out, that they said that once there was after the thing, they said, and they'll check it again. So they never thing, and the first thing is the long weekend in May of 2020, they passed it in the legislature and let it out at Berkeley. So long weekend, nobody, that's why it took a long time for people to figure out what's going on. And there was no.
Dory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I see it a little differently. I would much rather us be proactive rather than reactive. I think the reactive is the word that this government seems to, the realm they live in. They try to ram things through, and then when it backfires, they end up going back. And I think that it's important that we acknowledge, I think, from my perspective, an appreciation that they did listen. I think you acknowledge the fact that there was an outcry regarding the 1976 coal policy being rescinded. You acknowledge the fact that people spoke up and the government took it to heart, and they acknowledge that, and they're going to move forward, hopefully in a more consultative process. And at the same time, I hope that all stakeholders are a part of that. And I guess just from what we heard at our Foothills Little Bow meeting, it seemed that the further away you got from the mountains, the less concern there was. And I just think that's ill-placed. I think we're all so deeply connected by the water that comes from those mountains and its importance. I think that we all play a role in this, whether it's in our backyard or not. So I guess I don't see any harm in acknowledging the reinstatement and asking to be part of the process moving forward. I don't think we have to harp on anything of greater extent, but I do think there is value there.
I would agree with that.
Just a suggestion too, the letter could be worded such as, thank you for listening, but here's our concerns and we hope to be more involved in the consultation process. That is an option.
I'd be good with that.
That'd be okay?
Yeah, it's basically reiterating what they said themselves, right?
Yep.
And so what Tori is saying here is that you just want to thank them for doing that. That's
Yep.
what it boils down to.
Thank you for listening, and just, we are interested in talking to you more about this subject.
Yeah, that's okay with me. All right.
Bob?
No, you gotta make a motion, Tony, or?
No, direction's fine.
We should have a motion.
Okay.
Make a motion.
Have a motion. Let's have a motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
made by.
I would make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the next one is G 4.3, Colehurst, letter of support.
We received this letter from the town of Colehurst, and it was late arrival. Sorry about that, or it would have been in your package. The town of Colehurst, with assistance from MPE Engineering Limited, submitted an application for funding under the 2020-2021 Alberta Community Partnership for a regional stormwater management plan and framework project. If successful, the funding would be utilized to assist with the design of a stormwater plan for lands in the northern limits of the town west of Miners Park, along 55 Avenue and to the Lafarge Pond, include Wiggins Slough and the potential Precon Manufacturing Limited dry pond stormwater facility and discharge pipe system within Lethbridge County. As this was an intermunicipal collaboration component application, resolutions from the town of Colehurst and Lethbridge County in support of the project are required, however, can be submitted separate from the application. The town will act as managing partner, and no matching contribution is required by either municipality. So they're requesting a simple letter of support, and they've kind of outlined how they would like the letter worded. Move that Lethbridge County support the town of Colehurst's submission of a 2020-2021 Alberta Community Partnership Intermunicipal Collaboration Grant application for a regional stormwater infrastructure master plan project with no matching contribution required.
Who's making the motion? Claus?
Yeah, I'll make that motion that we support Colehurst in their asking.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor reports. January the 7th, had a meeting with the CAO. January the 8th was Mayors and Reeves. January the 13th, Lethbridge County Council meeting. The 15th was Foothills Little Bow virtual meeting. The 20th was the Alberta Cattle Feeders virtual town hall meeting. Steve Campbell and Ann and I attended on that one. And on the 20th, I also had a meeting again with Ann. The 21st was a virtual Provincial Ag Service Board conference. And the 26th was a council workshop regarding MDP review and update. Any questions? Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 13th, Lethbridge County Council meeting. 15th, Foothills Little Bow. 18th, we had a virtual Southern Regional Stormwater Drainage Committee meeting. A few takeaways from that. I guess one of the key points was just further discussion on how the group can try and communicate, educate surrounding partners and surrounding communities that have chosen not to financially contribute to the projects, and just try and see if we, if not, secure an audience, have the discussion, and I guess try and highlight the regional focus of this and the potential benefit to the region as a whole. There was also a discussion on moving forward once we get into the phases that are further down the road. Obviously, there's some phases that have some considerable price tags attached to them, so just some, I guess, initial discussion on how we move forward, how we see funding working for that. And then to tie into that, there was also some discussion regarding how to maybe better formalize the Southern Regional Stormwater Drainage Committee and make it more of a living entity that maybe stands on its own two legs a little bit more, as opposed to being so tied to the MD of Tabor. In this way, hopefully, maybe it could secure its own funding and take on a bit more responsibility and advocacy on the behalf of all of us, the partners, as opposed to the current model. No real definitive timelines on that, but we did, I guess, initiate that discussion to see what that might look like and what our options are. The 21st, the virtual ASB conference, which I thought was, all things considered, I thought it went really well. I give a lot of credit to Corey for the resolutions. I wasn't a voting member, but just to sit there and see what he went through, I give him a lot of credit and everyone that stuck it out. And the 26th, we had a council workshop regarding the MDP review and update. Thank you.
Any questions for Tori? Bob?
Yes, thank you. 13, Lethbridge County Council meeting. 15th, Foothills Little Bow Municipal Association. 21st, 2021 virtual provincial ASB conference. 26th, council workshop regarding MDP review and update. Thank you.
Any questions for Bob? Ken?
Lethbridge County meeting, Foothills Little Bow Association, 2021 virtual ASB and workshop regarding MDP.
Any questions for Ken? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. January 5th, Exhibition Park Board meeting. 13th, County Council meeting. 15th, Foothills Little Bow. 20th, had the Alberta Cattle Feeders Association Town Hall. And also Exhibition Park Committee meeting. 21st, had the Provincial ASB Conference. 26th, had Council Workshop on the MDP review. And also Exhibition Park had a special board meeting. And the 28th had the Exhibition Park AGM.
Any questions for Steve?
No. You just got no time to haul during that.
Claus?
January 13th, Lethbridge County meeting. The 15th, Foothills Little Bow. The 20th, Economic Development Lethbridge. 21st, we had Agriculture Service Board. And the 29th was the Sale Board meeting.
Any questions for Claus? Morris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. January 13th, Lethbridge County Council meeting. January 15th, Foothills Little Bow. That was virtual too, wasn't it? Bow Municipal Association, January 21st. 2021 Virtual Provincial Agricultural Service Board Conference, and the 26th Council Workshop regarding MPP review and updated hours of meeting.
Any questions for Morse? Oh, look at the hands up everywhere. Can we have a motion to accept for information? Ken? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Adjournment? Morris? All in favor? Carried. So Ann, we're across the street downstairs?
Yes, basement, room 3. Put your coats on, it's cold. Yeah, just to have room to spread out, because we have 18 people there, so.
How many? How many people?